Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States. And we are...
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. First of all, Dazzer brought it up, so I'm going to address something that's going on in Hayden's chat right now. And whoever doesn't agree with me, I will recommend for a FEMA gulag when shit goes down. Pineapple belongs on pizza. If you don't like pineapple on pizza, you are a communist and you should be put into a FEMA concentration camp. Now that we got that out of the way, I hope everybody's doing great tonight. We're here with Dog Mama. Hello.
Hello. Hey. It does go on pizza. Pineapple definitely goes on pizza.
100%. So, I'm glad we took care of that. You guys voted, and you picked the stage suicide Matheau Moore versus the state of Ohio. So we're going to start here in the Delaware County, Ohio Court of Common Pleas, and we're going to start watching the Matheau Moore trial. So let's, without further ado, let's,
a dude.
Hello. Yeah, a dude. This guy's a dude, I think.
He is a dude.
I mean, you can't be sure anymore, but
yeah, we're not going to assume.
Yeah. We wouldn't assume genders. We're not AIDS speakers.
No.
We have the lovely Dog Mama, my co-host for tonight. You're not going to say hi to yourself?
Hello, Dog Mama.
Perfect. Dazza, what's up, Mike?
Hey, Dazzer.
Hey, Shenny.
Hey, Shenny.
Genitals, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Genitals.
Bobby, what's up, bud?
Hey, Bobby.
Who the fuck spells your name Matthew? I don't know, but it annoyed the hell out of me too.
Yeah, I know. It's horrible.
I hope he's guilty just because of that. But with that being said, we're gonna kick this shit off. I got the lawn cut cage. So I'm like a real law tuber now.
Woohoo. So we were supposed to be late and gay?
Yeah, we were kind of.
Okay.
So if doodling helps you focus, feel free to do that as well in your notes. It's up to you.
So that is our defendant.
Again, I wanted to
Mr.
indicate you have
Matthew.
the right to do so, but give you a few instructions about those notes.
Hey, Digger.
Now, I also indicated to you
hey,
that
Liza.
I had the opportunity to ask questions of witnesses during the course of the trial. And what we will do is this procedure. Any one of you can ask a question. I also want to emphasize
this judge is really old.
that you ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
What we will do is when the witnesses concluded their testimony by counsel, I will then ask the jury if you have any questions. And if you have a question, you'll write it down on a piece of paper. And I'll give you some time if you need to do so to formulate that. One of our staff members will stop over and pick up your questions. Now, the question should be pointed to the witness's testimony only. In other words, the topic they were on and the facts that they presented to you.
Did
that
he
would be
do
the
it?
Nature of any questions.
That's what I would ask.
If you've got questions about other aspects of the case, you have to wait until that witness testifies regarding that. We will take your questions, and I will review them, and counsel will review them together. There are rules of evidence. As you know, I rule on objections, and so because you're not lawyers, you may ask a question that I can't ask the witness. Or there may be a question that I rephrase the way that you posed the question. Or I may just ask the question as you presented it to that witness to answer it on your behalf. So
this looks like a Harvard guy or an Ohio guy. He fits
both.
both.
Not asked that you provided.
Fuck Ohio.
As I say, there are certain rules that I have to address dealing with the questions posed to that witness. Again, I emphasize the question should be regarding solely the testimony of that witness. If there's something they said you wanted to be more clarified or a question regarding their testimony you wanted fleshed out a little bit more, you certainly are entitled to ask those types of questions, but only
Really?
to that particular witness.
Mm-hmm.
We will keep.
You can do
kinda like
that in
the
some
jury
jurisdictions.
And
No
again,
shit.
I emphasize,
Yeah.
you're not required to ask questions. If just one of you wants to ask a question out of the entire panel, that's fine. If none of you have
The
any
juries
questions,
have
that's
better
equally fine.
questions
So,
than
it's
the
probably an option, again,
lawyers do
like
sometimes.
the notes available to you that might assist
That's a
you in,
great idea. Like,
developing
I
and
like that a
understanding
lot.
the testimony and evidence as it is presented to you.
Do you want to speed it
All right,
up?
with that, we're going to begin our
Can,
case.
yeah.
As you know, the first portion of the case are opening statements of counsel. Because the state has the burden of proof, the state can speak to you first, and then the defense will have an opportunity to address you as well. Opening statements are designed to give you a sense or a roadmap of what this case is about from the perspective of both parties. And they will share that information with you. And I think it's helpful to give you a kind of a context or a beginning to what this case is about. I do caution you that opening statements in and of themselves are not evidence. In fact, rarely anything a lawyer says is actually evidence. They ask questions of witnesses, and the answers of the witnesses are evidence, but not the questions of the lawyer, unless the witness agrees with the question posed by that lawyer. Nonetheless, opening statements are helpful to give you some perspective as to where we're going, but in and of themselves, they are not evidence. When the first witness takes a stand, that's when we begin the presentation of evidence in this case.
He's very
Please give your
explanatory.
attention to the
He
representative of the
is.
state.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
He's a really good judge.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As the judge just stated to you, opening statements is our chance to give
Hey,
you.
Light Rain.
I know that this courtroom's a little wonky right now, so I'll
Hey,
probably
Light
wander
Rain.
back and forth, so please don't mind me over here. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I first get a new book, one of the first things I do is actually read the last few chapters of the book. It gives me an idea of where
Weirdo.
things are going to go. The ending is usually the most important part. It's usually the most exciting part. But what I've learned over the years is that that's a pretty bad practice to have, because without an understanding of the characters, of the plot, of what's happening beforehand, the ending really can be far different than what you're reading in black and white and what you see in front of you. Now,
Hey,
what you'll
AP.
see in this case,
Hey,
ladies and
AP.
gentlemen, is that
Almost
Genitals.
it's really no different.
This was in
The ending that you see
2022,
presented
last
today,
year.
is not what it seems. And what you'll hear during
He
the
did say the
testimony
last
from the
few
evidence in this
chapters,
case
shouldn't
is that there's a lot of things you need to be aware of about
Psycho.
what happened before Emily Noble went missing, what was happening and what people were doing while Emily Noble was missing, and what happened afterwards. Those details are extremely important in this case, and we ask you to focus on those details as you hear the evidence. What we expect you to hear during the presentation of the next 2 weeks, when you hear the evidence, the testimony, is that you'll see the ending in this case. You'll see that this is a very real case. This isn't a book. This is very
That's
real.
what I'm saying, Light Rain.
And it'll be clear to you
Freaking
what
psycho.
happened to Emily Noble.
He probably is the murderer.
Emily Noble was born
Allegedly.
on May 24th of 1968.
Eliza, no
from
spoilers.
Friends, family, people that knew her would describe it to her that she was outdoorsy, that she liked to forage for plants and herbs in various forested areas. The exact place that you went yesterday during your jury view, specifically, and I'll point that to you here in a second. You'll hear that she was outgoing and never met a stranger. You also hear that
You're good,
she
Eliza.
was brave, and you'll hear ample testimony about Emily Noble's life. Now,
I know what happens
you'll hear
too.
early on from some of the people most closely related that knew Emily the best. You'll hear from her sister that during this time period where most of the facts and circumstances of this case will be, which is May 24th, May 25th, and May 26th, that was a special time period for both Emily and her sister. You'll find out through the testimony, and we expect you'll hear that today, that Emily and her sister were born 2 days apart, the 24th and the 26th. And so the 25th was the one date and time that they were the same age. And that was a special time for them and something that they seemingly celebrated almost every year. What you'll hear during the testimony in this case is, again, the experiences everyone had with Emily. And the one thing that I think will be prevalent is that she has undergone a large amount of tragedy in her life. And as you'll hear testimony, we expect you'll hear testimony that during all these trials and tribulations that Emily went through, she was brave, she persevered, and fought through. Now, we expect during the testimony that you'll hear evidence that Emily was previously married. The individual's name is Mark. You'll hear that at one point while they were married. Mark died in 2011, and that he committed suicide. What you'll hear is that, again, that happened in 2011, and we expect you'll hear testimony about how Emily dealt with that in her personal life, her friends and family that were around her at that time, and how she persevered through a very trying time in her life. We also expect that you'll hear testimony that both of Emily's parents died within a year of each other, in 2015 and 2016.
Yes, argument over throw pillows, and that's all we're giving you. Late rain.
We expect you'll hear testimony, her reactions to that.
Hey, Jacob.
What she did to work through those
What's up, Jacob?
issues, what she did to work through that stress. We expect you'll hear testimony from those individuals over the next 2 weeks. During that same time frame, Emily met the defendant, Matheau Moore. When Emily met Mr. Moore, he also had a son that he brought to that marriage, and that son's name is Joey. We expect you to hear testimony a little bit about Joey over the next couple of weeks. What you'll hear is that during their marriage, up until 2018, that leading up to their marriage, that there was a relationship between Mr. Moore and Mr. Noble, Miss Noble and Mr. Moore, that they met each other, that they
Lawyer looks kind of slimy, though.
At that time, the defendant was living in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Eventually came to Westerville, and that's where they lived in their condo at Abbey Cross. From that time period on, the two of them, as well as Jody, lived at that location, the location that you saw yesterday during your jury view.
What's up, Maddie Graham?
As I mentioned,
Hey, Maddie
you'll hear
Graham.
testimony about their relationship during that time period, friends as well as family members that were around during that. Once the defendant was around, we expect you'll hear testimony from the witnesses over the next couple of weeks that some of those relationships that Emily had, long-standing relationships with friends, became strained, that they became less frequent, the more routine or even yearly get-togethers ceased happening, and that those relationships cease to exist.
He
other
does.
than
Deputy
conversations
Graham.
on the phone,
I was just going to
text
ask,
messages,
when do we think he's going to fall asleep?
yearly meetings and get-togethers that were so prevalent and important.
He's already dozing.
Became
Yep.
less frequent. We expect you'll hear that in 2019, tragedy struck Emily Noble once more, and that was when the son of the defendant, Joey, who was living there, that Emily took a passion to, committed suicide as well. Now, what's important to note, and I expect the testimony that you'll hear over the next 2 weeks will demonstrate to you, is that Emily was proactive when these issues occurred.
Maddie, no spoilers.
Therapy, she talked to others. During this time period, after Joey committed suicide in 2019, we expect that you'll hear testimony that she took time off of work.
Debbie Stemnuck.
Be at home with the defendant to work through what had just happened in their life, to seek therapy. And that towards the end of 2019, after doing those things, after being proactive, she continued to persevere and went back to work.
Funny thing is, he's also thinking about pineapple on pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we also expect to hear testimony that
Does that mean
leading
I'm
up to that,
healthy?
and then going now into 2020,
Yes, pineapple.
that Emily was making real changes in her life. She was changing her lifestyle, her diet, trying to be more physically fit. Those types of things that she's been working through over the course of the years, and that she was making serious changes in her life and seemingly was in a good place based on individuals that were around her, speaking with her, and talking with her.
That's what we're saying, Maddie.
Now, ladies and gentlemen,
Oh, no, I'm
that's
pro
information
pineapple on
expected to hear over
pizza.
the next 2
Yeah, me
weeks.
too.
And I think that is of paramount importance to understand
Deputy
the
Thick
background
Dickums.
and what is occurring prior to the disappearance of Emily Noble. And we expect that you'll hear ample testimony of that over the next 2 weeks.
Strawberry
Okay,
Ladies and
Jacob,
gentlemen,
that's
we'll also
too
hear
far.
testimony about,
Well,
I mean,
unless
I'd
it's
try
a
it.
May 24th, 2000.
unless it's a
May 25th.
dessert pizza.
And that is the last time Emily Noble was found alive. We expect you'll hear testimony that on the 24th, which of course was her birthday, that she and the defendant went to a water spring in Buckle, Ohio, which is about an hour and a half southeast of Columbus.
Throw
That
punch
they had
isn't
plans
normally
that day.
used for humans, but
Eventually went back to their home in Westerville in the what's known as the Uptown Westerville area, which is the little downtown area where there are many stores, restaurants, places you could walk back and forth, walk into. You'll hear that the two of them went to a couple of different establishments, Old Bag Nails, Cobley, Jimmy V's. Again, these are restaurants that are located in Uptown Westerville. And that roughly around the time period of 7 p.m., a little bit before, they were back at their home on Abbey Cross in Westerville, the place that you visited yesterday.
Look at the deep thought in his brain.
Trial,
He's
there
like,
were a few pictures
I've eaten at all those
day,
restaurants.
Pictures of Miss
Mhm.
the defendant. And one thing to note is that these are regular pictures, selfies. There's no injuries to the neck, face area, and that becomes important when we're looking at the timeline of events. And again, you'll hear testimony about this as we go through this case over the next 2 weeks.
They found your jet? I knew
The
we
next
should have went down
day,
there and looked for it,
on May
Jacob.
25th of 2020, we expect you'll see evidence. It wasn't until 5:47 p.m. that the defendant made a phone call to one of Emily's friends to say she was missing. It wasn't then until 5:54 p.m. that the Westerville Police Department was first notified and Miss Noble
Yeah, it is a little greasy, AP.
and vanished out of sight.
Pizza grease, maybe?
What we'll ask you to do is focus on the timeline of events, and you'll hear testimony over the next 2 weeks. You'll hear
It does look weird.
and see a body camera from one of the officers
Like
today
his
that originally came out to the scene,
Bukkake
spoke to
party
Mr.
got out
Moore.
a little out of hand, maybe.
Expects that during that testimony, you have evidence that Mr. Moore was awake, according to his words, as early as 10 a.m. Again, as early as 10 a.m. The phone call made with the friend was at 5:47 p.m. We expect that you'll hear his story initially. That the two of them had came back to their house, slept together in the bedroom. He woke up at some point at 1:30 in the morning, went, slept in another room, and then when he woke up, she was gone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see pictures of the house. You'll hear the statements made by Mr. Moore at the time, and what you'll find out during the testimony is that not only had Emily apparently disappeared, according to the defendant's own statement.
Yeah, there's so many
but that was
questions
done
with
without a note.
that jet thing.
You'll
It's kinda
find out that
crazy.
she didn't tell anyone she was leaving. Her phone was left behind. Her ID was left behind. Her wallet was still at the house. Her car was still at the house.
I didn't steal the
And then she
jet,
seemingly
Bobby.
disappeared after making the bed down. You also hear testimony that leading up to that weekend,
Just borrowed it.
Snowball made a dentist appointment for the following week. And that was not canceled. We also expect her to hear testimony that nothing had changed with her employment, and seemingly everything was normal. What you'll hear during the testimony, during the body cam, as well as testimony from officers and detectives from the Westville Police Department, is that
There's a bug in the
defendant's
cockpit.
statements jump around. The timeline is unclear. His
Well,
own
she might
timeline,
not have been wearing
where
her
individuals were
pregnant
is unclear,
captain flight suit
and that
from the U.S. government.
seemingly
So.
statements are made initially.
Oh, it was a
to
she?
control the situation. We expect your testimony.
I mean,
about that.
again, I'm not gonna
No.
go out on a limb here and say it's not.
Shortly after,
I don't
actually
know what
that
he
day as well as
identifies
going
as.
forward, you'll hear from numerous individuals
Yeah,
that
if I was 2
were
U.S.
part of the
sailors
search
fighting for
process.
China, yeah, there's some
Fine.
shady shit going on. It's about to
We
break.
expect you'll hear through testimony that individuals that were part of that search process may have never even met the defendant. Some of them had met him one time when they initially went and got flyers very early on in the investigation or when the disappearance first happened, but otherwise didn't see or even meet the defendant while these searches occurred for almost 4 months. You'll hear about these searches that police were involved, friends were involved, people that had never met Emily were involved because they wanted to do their part to help. They were searching close by, further away, woods, water, basically any area that they could think of. We also expect that you'll hear testimony over the next 2 weeks of some cell phone forensics that were done on the cell phones, attempts by law enforcement to put a timeline of events together. And again, as we go through that evidence, you'll see, or we expect that you'll see, the discrepancies.
I mean,
that
you know
occurred
you're
during this
on
time
a
period,
big
not only leading
trial.
up to,
You know this is going to be
in this
televised
experience,
all over
but
the
also
country.
night in question
Yeah.
on the 24th and 25th.
Go get a haircut, bro.
September 16th, 2020.
Not Sir Krispy Kreme. This guy, the lawyer.
Then you'll find out that the remains of Emily Noble were first located. What you'll hear is that 3 ladies, one of which knew Emily, one was the sister of that individual, and then a third person that had never met Emily in her life, were searching a wooded area that was nearby the condo. That after searches that had occurred for the better part of 3, almost 4 months at that time, resulted in not finding Ms. Noble.
All interns, docs, and everybody.
Searches more close by started to occur again, places that were thought to have been previously searched.
Turn the light off so I can see that.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you went on a jury view yesterday, and what we expect the testimony will show, I'm going to mark on the screen so that you have a chance to see what we're talking about. I put a red X on a location on Abbey Cross Lane.
Wait, what we
That's
expect
the
the
location
testimony
we
to
first stopped
show?
at yesterday, the
That's
home of and the defendant.
very non-committal.
Right.
You
Confident.
see just to the west, there's another red line there. That little, what appears to be a street is actually the bike path that you walked through yesterday. And then that wooded area to the west, that direction, is the wooded area that you'll hear about over the next 2 weeks. The area that Emily Noble was found was roughly in that area where I just placed the X there. Now, you'll hear testimony from the 3 individuals that found Emily that they were walking down the bike path, walking in a westward direction. The woods became crowded. As you all
Bruce, if
witnessed
nobody sees your
firsthand
X.
yesterday, there's shrubs and trees and things all over the place, and it's not readily apparent how to even get through the wooded area. But
Do
we
you see
expect
the
to hear
X?
testimony from the 3 individuals that as they were walking in
no.
a westward direction, eventually they found the remains of Emily Noble, found what they were looking for. You'll hear testimony that they called Westerville police.
Unless
At that time,
is it the red
Emily was
dot
found.
thing?
No. That was my first thought too, but I don't think it can be.
You'll see pictures of the scene taken from DCI. You'll see pictures of Emily and how she's situated. And what you'll see is that she was in a kneeling position under a tree that was about almost 6.5 feet tall, and was found with a micro USB cord wrapped around her neck.
Yeah, the testimony will show.
Mhm.
It sounds so weak.
Ladies and gentlemen, that
Yeah.
wasn't the end of the
Assertive.
investigation. And you'll hear testimony towards the tail end of these 2 weeks.
All those little
about
things
the
add
physical
up.
examinations that were
Right.
done, both on the scene as well as Emily Noble's remains. What we expect you'll hear during the testimony from the 2 experts from the state is that
They did it
Emily
again.
had bilateral fractures of the hyoid bone, which is a bone further up in the neck area. And they'll describe to you and show you where that bone is located, where the fractures were located. But bilateral meaning one on each side, so pressure on both sides. We also expect during the testimony you'll hear there are bilateral fractures of the greater horns of the thyroid cartilage, which is
Oh,
an
AP.
inch or so under in the same neck structures where the hyoid bone would be. And again, you'll hear testimony from a couple of experts demonstrating where that area is located
And AP
on
knows.
a body. You'll hear that
Definitely.
there was trauma to the left maxilla, the nasal bones, the left side of her face, up by her nose, top of her lip area. And what we expect you'll hear during the testimony is that these injuries that are described were all perimortem or at or around the time of death, as opposed to healing fractures that occurred earlier in time or items that or injuries that would have occurred after death. And we expect you'll hear testimony in that regard from many witnesses over the next 2 weeks, those experts. Specifically of those experts, we expect towards the tail end of our case that you'll hear from Dr. Smock. And during his testimony, he'll go through with you his experience, his background, his education, and we expect that his opinion will weigh heavy in this case. We expect during the testimony you'll hear from Dr. Smock that Emily Noble did not die of an incomplete hanging, that the scene itself was not consistent with the injuries he noted, and that his belief is based on the location, the bilateral fractures, that the cause of death of Emily Noble was a manual strangulation.
Just don't volunteer to look for any of the ones that you might have been involved in.
Yeah, that would be bad.
His educational background.
Yeah, no.
Why you will be able to
Entertainment purposes only, y'all.
demonstrate that to you. We also expect Dr. Smock will explain to you that based on the scene, based on the injuries, based on his opinion, this was a staged suicide, something that made him look like a suicide. Again, if you read the end of that book and saw the pictures and saw Miss Noble the way she was, you may think one thing. But when you get a chance to hear about the characters and see the timeline of events and see the injuries and hear all this testimony, the ending is not what it seemed maybe at first glance, but it's far more complicated and far more real than that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we expect that what you'll hear during the testimony as well is that Mr. Moore, from the beginning, was trying to control the situation. That he continued to stage this scene other than the physical scene that you saw or that you'll see occurred in those woods.
Exactly.
And
Light rain.
we expect that you'll hear in the
Yes.
testimony that Mr. Moore, the night of the 24th, going into the early morning of the 25th, that very important time frame in this case, that between 1 and 4 in the morning, he's sending messages to friends, stating he's taking a sleeping pill and that's probably going to sleep in. Again, I believe the evidence will demonstrate that from the beginning, Mr. Moore was controlling the scene and trying to stage what eventually will be located in those woods. That becomes of paramount importance when we believe you'll hear testimony today of Mr. Moore
like a
comparing Mr.
stretch.
Moore's original statements to law
Yeah.
enforcement about when he woke up, roughly 10 or 11 a.m. That's inconsistent with some of the activity that occurred on his phone, demonstrating that he was awake far earlier than that, at 8:30 in the morning, and that he was awake even further in the earlier morning up until about 4 in the morning.
You could train your dog
Expect
as
when
a
you hear the
cadaver dog.
testimony that
Yeah.
there's a major discrepancy in the time frame. You'll hear part of that today when you hear the initial statements, as well as when looking at the cell phone forensics. Ladies and gentlemen, we expect you will find out during the testimony that
For Kevin Bacon.
that's not
That's
all.
the downside, Jacob.
That the defendant sent a text message to Emily just before noon on the 25th, used the Find My iPhone app, which is an application designed to try to find where someone else's phone may be, and that he did that in around noon hour on the 25th, instead of leaving the room that he was laying in, instead of walking through the house to see if Ms. Noble was there. And again, we expect you to hear testimony that it wasn't for at least 6 hours after that before Mr. Moore finally called someone and said, "My wife is missing." Ladies and gentlemen, you'll see body camera footage from Officer Hollis today. Again, Officer Hollis is the responding officer on the scene. He came, had the initial conversations with Mathew Moore, and we expect that you'll see during that body camera footage that there's a specific area noted in the back of the garage that after some
Hey,
period of
Bama
time,
Rose.
2 hours after the report,
Hey,
Mr.
Bama
Moore
Rose.
points to and says, "This is weird. This cord doesn't belong here." And what we expect you'll see during the body camera footage is that there
Hello,
have been
AP?
things
But
moved
you're not getting
during the
another
pendency
hello. I already
of when
helloed you.
Officer Hollis originally first comes on
Hey,
scene
Jason J.
to when the defendant points
Oh,
this area out.
shit, Jason.
Oh, man.
I hope you're all right,
Take
buddy.
care.
Following that
Yeah.
conversation and during that conversation, you'll hear that Mr. Moore says, "This area is weird. I haven't touched it, but this seems out of place to me. Somebody must have done this."
Dr. Undies.
But what we expect you'll hear is that it's just another defendant controlling the scene, staging the scene to make this look like something
more you
other
know.
than what it was. Now, ladies and gentlemen, after 2 weeks of testimony, you're going to hear evidence about cell phones, physical evidence. You're going to hear about the parties, everyone involved. And we ask you to be diligent in your review. Diligent in your review of the timeline, how things go together, and diligent when reviewing this case and discussing. And at the end of the 2 weeks, we're going to ask you to see this for exactly what this is. And we're going to ask you to make a finding of guilty of the charge of murder. Thank you.
Thank you. Please give your attention for counsel for the defense. You're welcome.
And here's the defense.
You just want the document.
Sure.
Since I have my screen split, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
the cut cage is over your face, and it's funny.
Thanks.
Good morning. As I introduced myself yesterday, Diane Menashe on behalf of Matt Moore, my co-counsel, Alexander Petrello. The state, I just listened to them for about 30 minutes, and they told you their theory. Their theory is that Matt Moore killed his wife. Don't know when, but Matt Moore kills his wife, and then somehow gets her body into the wooded area where you walked yesterday and stages her death. And then I heard the state go on to say that their evidence will show how not just was he that sophisticated to figure out those two things, but he then also took great efforts to control the situation after May 24th and May 25th of 2020. Members of the jury, the evidence will show that the state's theory is based on speculation and inferences. It is not supported by the evidence. And simply, members of the jury, their theory doesn't make sense. Now, I know you were listening to the state's opening just as well as I was, and the judge has already told you that our opening statements are not evidence. They are just how we believe the evidence will unfold. But I say this, that in my 30-some minutes of listening to the state's argument, I noted that they didn't mention reasonable doubt. That is their burden. Their burden is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And we talked about that in voir dire. It's their burden and their burden alone. And the judge has already given you the instructions of law, and he will again, which say, if the state fails to meet their burden,
already into this chick,
the only
she is
appropriate
fired.
verdict as to
She
each
is.
of the counts in this case is not guilty. And here's why I mentioned reasonable doubt, and that they didn't mention it, is because
Yes,
as the judge
Ghostry,
told
I'm
you, and
here.
as I talked about in voir dire, reasonable doubt is a doubt based on reason and common sense. And so I want to talk about this morning
It's a
during my
figment of
opening
my
statement
imagination.
as to why it doesn't make sense
Dog mom
that
is not
Mathew
here.
Moore, and I'll call him Matt, that Matt killed his wife Emily and then staged her suicide. First, members of the jury, the evidence will show there's no physical evidence. You will hear evidence the state will put on, we anticipate, that law enforcement extensively searched the area of 46 Abbey Cross. Not just Westerville Police Departments, but the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations was brought in. A unit whose sole job, members of the jury, is to look for forensics. They're there too. And it's not just the house. And when I say the house, members of the jury, the evidence will show that they searched the entire perimeter area. But the evidence will also show that exhaustively and extensively, they searched the Ultima, they searched the Subaru, they searched the attic, with Matt's permission, by the way, did they do all these searches. They searched the bedding, the sheets that were in Joey's bedroom, where Matt Moore told the police, the evidence will show he slept once he got up in the middle of the night and he had to go to the bathroom, he slept in that bedroom. More bedding. They searched the bathroom, and this is why this is important. The evidence will show members of jury, and in particular,
She
what
does
was
kinda
in
look like Dana
the
Nessel.
hamper in the bathroom. Because
Thanks
they
for
searched
wrecking it
this
for
too.
me, AP.
The evidence will show that the clothing in the hamper is the same clothing that Matt Moore and Emily Moore were wearing on her birthday the night before, when she's last seen. And so what comes of all these searches that were made by law enforcement, not just at Westerville Police Department, but also for BCI and I, the house, the cars, the attic, the clothes, the evidence will show you that there's nothing. There's no blood, there's no tissue, there's no fibers, there's nothing. But the evidence will show it wasn't just people that searched all of those places that we just went through. It was also cadaver dogs. Cadaver dogs that the evidence will tell you are trained specifically to come to a scene, a location, and alert when they smell or detect either blood, tissue, or any smell of death. The cadaver dogs, in addition to humans, searched all the areas I just told you about.
Oh, I have
What
a
will
joke,
the
but
evidence
it's
show that
not
the
late
cadaver
enough
dogs
yet.
found? There's no physical injuries. And when I say physical injuries, I mean to Matt. He calls the 911, as the state has said, on May 25th and reports that his wife is missing. I want to pause there, though. He calls 911, brings the police to his house. The evidence will show certainly that that's what a 911 call does. Common sense tells us that. They get there, and then within 48 hours, they ask my client, Matt, to come down to the police station and give a statement, and he does. He goes to the police station, and when
they're
he's
just
there, two of the
posers, Late
detectives
Rain.
say, what about scratches or injuries on him? The evidence will show that Matt Moore takes off his shirt, not at the direction of the state, but he takes off his shirt. Now, before he takes off his shirt, of course, his face is exposed, and you're going to see a body cam video of Officer Hollis, and you will see what Matt Moore is wearing when the officers arrive. And you'll see which parts of his body are exposed. So he takes off his shirt. Officers lead it. Hands, forearms, chest, neck, face, back, legs. What did they find? Nothing. And consider this evidence, members of the jury, or the lack of evidence, particularly after you went to that wooded area yesterday. The judge is correct to say that your jury view in and of itself is not evidence. But it is, as the judge told you yesterday, something for you to consider when you hear the evidence that's presented. Think about how hard it was to get down there. And I even just wrote what the state said in their opening about that area. It was essentially shrubs and trees, not readily apparent it's even there. Now, members of the jury, again, our statements are not evidence, but what the state says they will give to you to meet their burden, hold them to it. Because as they started this morning, that is their roadmap. So there's no physical injuries on Matt Moore. There's no time of death in this case, members of the jury. The state has alleged, and the judge read you the charges, and the state has just stood up in his opening and said that on May 24th and May 25th of 2020, Matt Moore killed his wife, and then there's also a charge of felonious assault, but there's 2 counts of murder and felonious assault. The dates are the 24th and 25th. There
Two
is
counts?
no witness. There is no expert. There is no police officer.
Yeah,
there is no
that's a
lay
little
witness
odd.
that can or will give you the time of death. And I remember in voir dire yesterday when I was talking to the veneer about dates and attention span, and I remember saying dates are incredibly important in this case. The dates we know are the date that Emily went missing. The last she was seen is by a neighbor that lives across from 46 Abbey Cross, where you went yesterday. In fact, a neighbor that lives directly across the street. He sees Emily going for a walk that morning in her walking clothes. And we know the evidence will show, evidence that we will present, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we know that he definitely saw Emily on the 25th and not any other date, based on the cell phone evidence. So there is no time of death. We know that Emily went missing on March 25th is when she's last seen by someone other than Matt Moore, and we know that she's found on September 16th. We do not know when she got to the park or how she got to the park, but with respect to time of death, there is no information that the state will offer you as to that at any point in this trial. We will, however, present expert
Usually.
from the University of Tennessee,
It could be
who is a researcher at an institute called the Body Farm. And in fact, it's an expert that the state originally engaged in this case.
Very true.
And then the evidence will show decided not to use after she rendered a report.
Objection. Fair characterization.
Ladies and gentlemen, opening statement is not evidence, so therefore you will not consider statements as evidence to render your decision in this case. Please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Vivaldi is an expert from the University of Tennessee. She will testify that the most you can tell
Good thinking,
from
buddy.
the scene,
Yeah.
her training and expertise, and her work studying decaying corpses, is that the body decomposed there and had been there for a while. There is no time frame that even the best expert can put as to where and when Emily got to that scene. Furthermore, not only is there not a time of death, but the evidence will also show that there is no trace of Emily in that wooded area in May or June of 2020. And I want to go over some maps with you, and I know members of the jury, you were there yesterday. I'll start with this. This, as the state just showed you, is the map of the general area. To orient ourselves, this is kind of the general area right here where Emily's found. And as you are walking up that sidewalk, you might remember seeing an electrical box on the ground. That can always orient you in the pictures that you will see. But that's the general area right there where Emily was found. And yesterday, of course, this right here is the bike path, walking path. And this, of course, is County Line Road. want to talk to you about when I say the evidence will show there's no trace of Emily in the woods or May or June. You are going to hear testimony that on the 25th, when the police arrived at the house, Matt Moore voluntarily said to the police officers, "Let me take you to the area where Emily loved to walk and forage." Where did he take her? Where did he take the police? Right there. Their own officers will have to admit to that Matt, as the evidence will show, walked them along this very line. And then what happened, well, the evidence will show that area, that exact area. In fact, the police will not only concede this during the evidence of this case, but they have all along in this investigation. They searched this area on foot 3 times. 3 times in May and June, and nothing. But like with the house and the car and the attic, it wasn't just humans, because cadaver dogs searched that area too. The evidence will show, and what was found when cadaver dogs went to the area where Matt Moore took the police as Emily's favorite walking path? Nothing. The evidence will also show the individual that lives at that house right there, whose kids play in the back of her house, butts right up to that wooded area, was home all Memorial Day weekend. Whether it was warm, the evidence will show. She saw nothing. She smelled nothing. No trace of Emily in the woods in May or June. Furthermore, the evidence will show that there's no evidence that connects
Not even a smell?
to the scene.
Odd.
The
Yeah.
state has just promised you that they will give you the testimony of Detective Hollis, and I believe that will happen today, and you will be able to see the body cam of Detective Hollis when he rolls up onto Abbey Cross on May 25th and interacts with Matt Moore. The state in their opening talked to you about this corner of the garage. The Detective Hollis body cam will also show you something else that's interesting, is that in the camera, in the footage, the police are, from the beginning, telling Matt that he's a suspect, that they know they killed his wife. Right from the beginning. And so why is this important? Is because the evidence will show that if that's what the officers were thinking, that common sense and the evidence supports, they didn't lose sight of that guy. They did not lose sight of him. Not mentioned, but the evidence will show that on May 25th, because not only did they not want to lose sight of him, they didn't want to lose track of him. They put a GPS on his car without him even knowing. Because that's the whole point of a GPS, right? Put it on someone's car so they don't know we're looking or following, so that we could trace their every move at any minute of any day.
Fuck, just using
What
their
did they find
tag.
from the GPS?
They won't notice.
Yeah, right?
Further, not only is there no movement from Abbey Cross and Matt to that scene, is that the items found at the scene, forensically, tested, in particular, the USB cord that Emily had tied around her neck. What forensics are on the USB cord connecting the cord to Matt? Nothing. Further, there's no eyewitnesses. And I don't just mean eyewitnesses to what they claim is a murder, to the transportation, allegedly, of a body to a wooded area. There's no eyewitnesses to putting a body in there. And members of the jury, again, I say this, I know the judge told you your jury view wasn't evidence, but it's certainly for your consideration. You walked county line. You were able to feel and observe the amount of traffic on that road. You were also able to feel and observe whether there is a place where you can park on that road next to the wooded area. But there's no eyewitnesses. And certainly there was no eyewitness given by the state in their map. There's also members of the jury, the evidence will show no motive. And I know we talked about this yesterday in voir dire, that the state under Ohio law doesn't have to give you motive. And I completely agree with that. I also, though, as the judge will tell you, agree that there is a further instruction, that the absence of motive can be used by you in your determination as to purpose or intent. And the judge will tell you more about that, but it's critically important. Now, in the state's opening, they talked about Emily's bravery and her persistence. Joey, Matt's son, at around the age 18, hung himself with a cord in a wooded area about 1 mile from Abbey Cross. about 10 months prior to Emily being found in a wooded area with a cord around her neck. There is no question that Joey's death was a suicide.
So he killed
That's
them
what the
both?
evidence will show. His death was a suicide. And I remember during voir dire, one of the jurors said, you know, second most common death of juveniles is suicide, and Joey was a victim of that statistic. And the state actually and I will agree that Joey's suicide and hanging was particularly troublesome to both Matt and Emily. Both of them, neither of them could work. Emily took a 3 to 4 months absence from her job. Matt, well, you'll see there's text messages between Emily and Matt. Matt really was at a place in his life where getting up every day and just even doing things of normalcy was well seemingly impossible. And the evidence will show that. And then the state talked about what Emily did, was that Emily then went to counseling in August of 2019 because of Joey's death. And members of the jury, you will hear
AP.
that when she goes to counseling, she goes because she is traumatized by the death and loss of Joey. She reports difficulty feeling sad and empty and guilty.
That's where I'm headed with
She's
this one so
paranoid
far,
about her
AP.
husband's well-being. She's struggling with loss of interest in activities, with memories. She notes in her therapy that she has a prior history with struggling with anxiety. And members of the jury, the evidence will show she has a history of struggling with anger prior to the loss of her other loved ones. And she's starting to experience depression and notes that she's experienced depression before. The state in its opening talked about Emily's traumatic life. And I say this, you know, there's not a lot of things that the evidence will be agreed upon by both sides in this case, but certainly that's one that I agree. Emily's first husband killed himself by shooting his head in 2011. A year later, in 2012, the evidence will show one of her very good friends killed herself. The evidence will show that. In 2017, her brother-in-law, by marriage, so Mark's brother, kills himself. In 2019, Joey hangs himself in a park from a tree.
That's a lot of
Trauma
death.
is almost an understatement as to what Emily
Yeah, that's a lot of dead people around you.
had lived through.
Mm-hmm.
There is no question about that. But Joey, her stepson, and again, our openings aren't arguments, but the state said Emily was passionate about Joey. And the evidence will certainly support her passion and love for Joey and what
I know,
Matt
Shinny, right?
in 2019 did to her. Emotionally and physically. And then, members of the jury, at the end of 2019, you will see that she unexpectedly stopped counseling and therapy. And instead, she turned to what Emily knew so well, which was trying to find peace in nature and the woods. She would walk daily, she would
Fucking
forage,
hippie.
she would go into the woods. You will hear that Emily and Matt were kind of a bunch of hippies. They would collect plants, nettles, they would dry them in the garage. You're going to see pictures of this. They canned, they liked to forage for their own food, despite them living in Westerville, Ohio. She went to nature, the evidence will show, to find peace. And of course, it was nature where she was found
And a lover.
on September 16th of 2020. Members
Allegedly.
of the jury, there's also no evidence of staging. I certainly listened to the state's opening that their theory is that Matt kills her, takes her to the wooded area, and then stages her death. And this is why, as you listen to this evidence, I ask you, members of the jury, to really use your common sense. Because the evidence will show that Emily is found in the position where you stood yesterday, in that branch. She's found with her water bottle next to her. Her hair is down. We know that because the way her hair is matted when she's found. Her hair is down. Hair tie around her wrist. She's in her walking clothes. And hair tie around her wrist, I just say, is because we know that the last person that saw her leaving for a walk. She's in clothing that, as you look closely, right, is clothing that you would wear when you're walking. And you don't even need to look closely because the evidence will show she has her tennis shoes on.
Lyrene,
Not the shoes,
she's very
or the
passionate.
clothing that she's seen in the night before. And the evidence will show there is no question as to
This
what
is how you would
happened
want a
on
defense
her
attorney to
birthday,
act.
because we have pictures, selfies,
Yeah.
that they took of themselves at the bar as they're celebrating her birthday. And here's something else with respect to the evidence will show about about the staging, is that as Emily's found, her right hand is gripping her ankle. You will hear evidence about the difference between a complete hanging and an incomplete hanging. But members of the jury, there is no evidence that that scene was staged. And then lastly, I want to talk about where the state ended. Sort of the last chapter in their book is their experts. I noticed in their opening statement, they spoke a lot when they talked about their experts about Dr. Smock. And as you listen to the evidence in this case, the evidence will show that Emily goes missing on the 25th. She's found on September 16th of 20. Almost a year before Matt Moore is charged.
I
Living
am starting to agree, AP.
Almost a year. And so what happens will the evidence show right before he
Bitch
gets
had death
charged?
following her around.
Again, timing is everything. Dr. Smock is engaged by the state and he issues a report. As you listen to the testimony of Dr. Smock, I ask you members of the juries to consider three things. First of all, what he relied upon in determining his conclusions. His field of expertise and the opinions that he can and cannot render. Because members of the jury, I heard the state in their opening say, quote, and please always trust your notes over mine. Dr. Smock will tell you the cause of death was manual strangulation. I ask you members of the jury to wait until Dr. Smock's testimony, because the judge will tell you that's what jurors have to do, is to be open-minded and wait till you hear all the evidence. Dr. Smock himself, under oath, will have to agree, and will agree, that he is actually not allowed to offer any opinions with respect to manner and cause of death. Only a medical examiner is allowed to do that. And the evidence will show that the medical examiner in this case, the doctor that actually performed the autopsy on Emily Noble's remains, the only cause of death that that medical examiner found is that injuries to the head and neck caused her death. Injuries, right? Head and neck caused her death. Now, that's what the evidence won't show, and why I led my opening with, why doesn't the state's case make sense? And while it's not my usual practice, this case is unusual in many ways. And so I will, in my opening statement, tell the jury, you, each and every one of you, what the defense will put on as evidence. And I say I don't usually do this because I don't have a burden. I, as Matt Moore's attorney, Matt Moore, Alexander Petrella, have to put on nothing. But we will. And in fact, we're going to give you 4 experts and lay witnesses. And here's what a brief overview of what our experts will say. First and foremost, we'll call Dr. Bolte. Biomechanics expert, Dr. Bolte is the director at the Ohio State Biomechanics Research Center. He's an expert in the experimental analysis of human injury tolerance and mechanisms under different loading conditions. Here's the value and what you will hear from Dr. Bolte. Undisputed testimony. And it's undisputed because he went to the scene and tested the branch. And he did so at the request of the state of Ohio. And I
Fucking
said,
state of
the
Ohio.
evidence will show again, jury review, when you went down there yesterday and was shown the branch where Emily was found is quite small.
Yes, Eliza.
Dr. Bolte will come in here and say that actually when he went down there, he as an expert in biomechanics thought there's no way this branch can hold. But he did 2 different tests, a static test and a dynamic test. Dr. Bolte will tell you that, and this is on video, you will see the videos. You will not have to imagine this, you will see the tests. First test is he slowly adds weights, increments of weights to the branch to see if not only will the branch hold, but the rate of deflection of the branch. Static test, branch holds. In fact, the deflection measurement is 2 inches. That's how strong the branch is. Then, after he's tested on the static test, he does a dynamic test. And a dynamic test, the evidence will show, is what happens if someone were to hang themselves and let their weight fall. Could it happen? He takes a crash test dummy, the same weight as Emily Noble, ties a USB cord in the same or similar fashion as Emily tied it around her neck on the 25th of May. It's on video, you can see it. And he takes the crash test dummy and he drops it. That's the branch. Holds her up. We will also give you the testimony of Dr. Heather Garvin, a forensic anthropologist who is board certified. And board certification, the evidence will show, certainly matters. She's one of 100+ individuals in this country who is a board certified forensic anthropologist. And she will talk about
Light rain, I'm not getting it.
The fractures. Most specifically, the state just told you that there's perimortem nasal fractures. Dr. Garvin will say that in her experience, training, and education, that she sees no perimortem nasal fractures. She will also
Are you
tell
trying to
you
suggest that this
that
defense
based on her
attorney
training,
munches
experience, and
carpet? Because
expertise,
I agree.
that the bilateral fracture that the state just told you about to the greater horns of the hyoid and the bilateral fractures to the superior horns of the hyoid can occur in hangings. Incomplete and complete hangings. Now, members of the jury, you will not hear from Dr. Garvin cause of death, because she cannot testify as to cause of death. Well, again, only a medical examiner can. But she will tell you about mechanisms of injury. We will also give to you the testimony of Matt Curtin. In the state's opening,
Curtain?
I wrote down law enforcement attempts to put together a timeline
Draw the
based on the cell
curtains.
data. We will actually give you a computer scientist who is a cybersecurity expert. All he does is look at cell data and computers and peel back the onion to find what's there. Even when the users want to hide anything and everything. That's who Matt Curtin is. And Matt will tell you 3 really important
Hope he
things
doesn't find my hard
that,
drive.
again, show that the state's theories don't make sense. He'll tell you about phone location history for Matt and Emily on May 24th and 25th. He will tell you about patterns of user activity, or more specifically, he will tell you how there are no patterns because there is not enough data. He will also tell you about the user browser history. All this evidence about how Matt is so sophisticated, staging this whole area. What are his browser history searches? What are Emily's browser history searches leading up? Matt will give you that information. But I tell you this now, the evidence will show there is no browser history about how do you kill someone, how do you hang someone, how do you stage a suicide. Nothing.
It's on
There is some browser history
1.25,
about,
but
from
that's
Emily
Yeah.
about going into the woods
crazy
to find
high.
control, though.
No, she
And then in
speaks
addition, we
like
will also
this.
give you Dr. Vidoli,
We're just
which
a
I talked
little
about from the University of Tennessee. Her entire life's
faster.
work is studying bodies and their rate of decay and decomposition. In addition to experts, we'll give you some lay witnesses. Again, members of the jury, it's not our burden, but nothing could be more important. And so we will give you the cadaver dog handler. She will come in here and testify and tell you where she searched with her dogs. She
The
will tell
dog
you
will?
what a cadaver dog is trained to do. She will tell you the expertise and certification of her dogs.
Oh,
Yeah.
handler.
We will give you other testimony. We propose members of the jury, but I remind you that we have no burden. And maybe it sounds a bit like a broken record that I say that, but there is no such thing when it comes to a case like this. The burden is here. It is the highest burden in the land. This is a criminal case. Reasonable doubt is based on reason and
My
common
client
sense.
is a criminal.
On behalf of Matt Moore and my co-counsel, I am confident that after you've heard all the evidence, that you will render the appropriate verdicts of not guilty. Thank you so much.
She said that?
No,
Thank you, counsel.
Oh.
You can call the first witness.
I made it up.
I was like, I don't
It would've been
remember
funnier
that.
if she did.
Yeah.
Call Amy Thomas.
Should I skip? I don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
School of Journalism and Public Relations,
There we go.
and worked for 5 years before getting married, and then I went back to school more
It was
recently.
actually pretty quick, though, that they got into
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Yeah.
I work in information technology.
I want to talk a little bit about your family first. So who were your parents?
Lester and Ruth Ann Noble,
And where did they live?
Westerville, Ohio, Chinook Township.
And how long did they live in Westerville?
Well, they met in high school. I know my mom moved to Westerville about then. My dad was born in Westerville, so their entire lives.
Did you have any siblings?
I do, an older brother and my sister Emily.
Who's your older brother?
Andrew Noble,
And how much older is he than you?
I think 6 years.
And then you mentioned your sister Emily.
Yes,
And is she older or younger than you?
she's 1 year younger.
I'm sorry to do this, but I got to ask you, what's your birthday?
May 26th,
And what year?
1967,
And that would make you how old today?
55.
And you mentioned that Emily is a year younger than you are?
Yes,
When was
This
Emily?
guy's
May
weird.
24th,
Of 19...
1968.
Objection, I'm not telling you
So-
shit about my family.
Two days shy
Yeah.
of being a year
Fucking
older.
open
Yes.
court.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
That's one of my favorite memories or commonalities with my sister. She came home from the hospital on my birthday. And I had stayed with my grandma for 2 days, and she gave me a doll and taught me to touch her gently on the nose and say, "My baby." And so that's exactly what I did when I first saw Emily, is I touched her on the nose and said, "My baby." And my mother said she spent the next 2 years saying to me, "That's my baby." That was a special moment and one we relived every year. Not the my baby part, but celebrating the fact that we were the same age and had that special 2 days together.
So when Emily would have a birthday on May 24th,
This lawyer looks like he's going to
24th
sell
and
me a
25th,
couch.
then you would be the same numerical age on those 2 days.
Yes.
Until you would turn a year older on May 24th.
Which she was happy to remind me. So on the 24th, I usually called her and said, "Happy birthday, sister, we're the same age today." Then on the 25th, at some point, she'd call me and say, "Hey, sister, we're the same age today." And then on the 26th, she would call me and say, "Hey, happy birthday." I'm younger, as though to say I'm younger again.
Was that time always a special time for
Yes.
the two of you?
Yes, in fact, I can say that no matter what
Look
had
at his
happened during
cup
the
holders and
year,
armrests.
that day was sacred. I mean, that always happened every single year.
All right, Your Honor, may I approach what lets me mark the stage as a one?
You the one? Yes.
And I'm handing you photographs of Mark State 01. Take a minute to look that over. All right. Do you recognize that individual?
I do.
And who is that?
That's my sister, Emily Noble.
You understand that's the published State 01 of the jury? For the record, we're now showing State 01 up on the overhead. So again, can you tell the jury who this is?
This is my sister, Emily Ann Noble.
How would you describe Emily?
She always came up to here on me, so she's small of stature, but I would say that in terms of personality, there are always three main things that would come to mind for me. And the first is she was courageous and strong. The other is that she really loved nature and the outdoors. And any story I would tell about us growing up
Was
would
that the
involve
lady
those
that died?
two ideas.
Yeah.
But since she's been gone,
Okay.
I realized how very social she was, and I didn't realize the extent until she was gone.
And how did you find that out?
Well, the day that I found out she was missing, I reached out. I just jotted down a list of about, 8 names immediately came to mind. And I called each of them, and it spread out from there, people calling me, and it became a large part of my day interacting with dozens and dozens of people. And then I looked on her Facebook page, and she had just shy of 1,000 friends. And I didn't realize that, but a lot.
Okay, that was irrelevant.
I want to talk about some of the events and things that occurred in Emily's
She's
life.
popular on
So,
Facebook.
I want to talk first about
Yeah.
kind of some of the friends that she
Facebook
had in the
famous.
90s. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, the 90s would be, I first moved to DC. So when I first moved to DC, the friend that immediately comes to mind is Derek Hayes. She had dated his brother and became very close with both of them, and he was dying of HIV/AIDS. And she brought him to
Oh,
my
he was a
home
gay.
where I lived with 3 other women, and he shared about his illness with us, and it was life-altering for me.
Hey, Dees.
To hear that. I was with a
With him
conservative
and the
Christian.
juror,
We
if I
were,
remember correctly.
a house
Yes.
of conservative Christians, and it
Yeah.
really was helpful.
But no
to hear
spoilers.
And put a
Jeez.
face to that horrible.
Jeez,
thing.
Dees.
Actually criminal, Sean?
Thinking
Yeah.
entirely.
All right,
And that's
I'll
pretty
reach out to him.
typical of the friends that I met of Emily's. That was the first friend of hers who died that I remember. But I met other friends that she would bring to the house for Thanksgiving or a family cookout and say, "Hey, this is Rex," or "Hey, this is Karen." And they were just fun and lively people and characters. I remember Rex came to our house with overalls without a shirt and just had all kinds of funny stories to tell. And that was the second friend I remember her saying that died. One day I asked how he was doing.
There's no relevance to
So
any of
that's
this.
No.
the ones that
I
come
think
to
it's
mind
just
in the
because it's
90s.
his sister
you say
or
that
her
she was-
sister.
Yeah.
Confronted with
So
death?
there's finally
Rephrase
an
the question.
objection.
Well, it was
Was
leading,
she
but
around death even at an early age because of her association with those people?
Yes.
I think it's one of those we got to let it go because it
Was
looks
Emily
shitty
ever
if we
married?
object.
Yes.
yeah.
And can you tell us who she first got married to?
Yeah, she first married Mark Farmelo, a local musician, and that was in 2008, and
Maybe.
I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
when they met, and I don't remember, but they had many common friends in the music scene. And so they eloped in Vegas. And that summer, when my family and I came to Ohio, we had a big reception. And that's how I believe I don't remember exactly when I first met him, but I definitely remember that event.
Relevant.
And subsequent ones when we visited Ohio.
Tell us about how Emily was acting or feeling emotionally at that time after her marriage to Mark.
Who gives
Oh,
a
very
shit?
happy. They were like two peas in a pod. They dressed alike. They had similar expressions. I remember one day watching them go out the door, and they both had like a shoulder satchel on, and like they have matching bags. Who does that? And it was very cute. They were both kind of reserved shy people.
Gross.
Anything you can tell me about the way your sister Emily would dress?
Well, a black jacket, a black hat, and black pants.
Was that always sort of her style, or
Yeah,
the kind of thing she liked to wear?
Yes. She had some white T-shirts and a pair of red shorts, I remember. I never saw her wear them, but I saw them in her closet.
How did Emily's relationship with Mark end?
He took his own life.
And do you remember when that was?
It was in 2011, I think October.
He
Did you
kind of
come
looks
back
like
to
a
Ohio
music
after that occurred?
teacher.
I did.
What's his profession?
Did you have conversations with Emily about what had happened?
Yes, at my parents' house.
So, again, focusing on kind of her emotions, her state of mind, how was she at that time?
Your Honor, objection is relevant to how she was in 2011.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
So, again, focusing on the state of mind or emotions, can you tell us how she was? at that
Yeah,
time?
she was devastated. She was very sad,
Exactly, AP.
listless and despondent are the words that came to mind. Wondering, how do I deal with this? I remember pulling out a list from an online organization that just showed, like, these are the steps to follow. I said, well, here's a checklist. Let's start going through it. And it was not fun, but I remember also sitting at her home.
I don't remember what he did.
Mark worked in model airplanes, really.
Jeez,
intricate
quit
ones,
with
and
the
they were hanging,
spoilers.
Sitting on the coffee table, and
Damn it,
she
Deez, I
just
will
said, what am I
ban
going
you.
to do with this? What am I going to do with those? And it was a stack of guitars. So it was sad. That's the main word that comes to mind.
Did you talk to her about?
I don't know
thoughts
what
she
he
might be
did.
having about harming herself?
I
I
did.
don't see anything about it
I
either.
remember
Yeah.
before leaving, telling her goodbye and just asking her, should I check in on you? How are you doing? She said, I'm doing okay. I said, do you have any thoughts of harming yourself or others? And she said, no, I don't.
I want to talk again about your dad, Lester.
Yes.
Is he alive today?
No, he is deceased.
And when did he pass away?
2015. He fell in May and had surgery and never recovered from it, and he died in June of 2015.
And where was that he fell?
At their home in the yard in
Oh,
West
that's right.
Ohio.
That's right, Deez. I remember now.
What did your mom do with that property then after your dad passed away?
After he died, she put it on the market. Emily and I helped
Yeah,
clean
I
it
don't
out, but
see
mostly
anything.
Emily. And she put it on the market and sold it and bought a condo in Westerville.
And where was that condo located?
Yeah, he
In
was kind of
Crossing,
retired.
So County Line Road and
Oh,
State.
okay.
Yeah.
And so we're going to hear testimony about that location at 46 Abbey Cross. That was the condo that initially belonged to your mother.
Yes.
Is your mom still alive?
No.
And when did your mom pass away?
Mom passed away in 2016 in June.
So less than a year after your dad passed away?
That is correct.
What do you remember about that time?
Emily knew
Relevant.
before I did. My phone had broken, and so my kids came to my home and woke me up, and then the police came to the door and said, your mom is dead. And so I kind of piecemeal put it together in the middle of the night that she had died in a car accident coming from Southeast Ohio back to Delaware, and no one knew who she
F-35
was. And
May have been hacked
so
by
it took a little bit of
AI.
time for them to piece it together, but she was planning to meet friends in Westerville uptown for dinner, including
That's
Emily.
awesome.
And when she didn't show up,
Yeah.
Emily walked over to the police department and said,
AP.
"Help me find my mom."
Did you come back to Ohio after your mom died?
Yes, not right away, about 2
AP,
days
don't be
later.
a PP.
And did you interact with your sister Emily then at that time?
Yes, we met at Mom's place there at the condo. And I'll just never forget walking in, and she met me out in front. I actually didn't know the address of this by heart because it was anytime I drove in, Mom would be standing in the front yard, and Mom wasn't there, but there was Emily. And got out of the car, and we just hugged, cried. We went in the condo, and it was so quiet, and right there on the counter was a coupon for a car wash and a coupon for the restaurant. So we knew exactly what her plans were that night, and yeah, that's what I remember about Mom dying initially.
Did you have conversations with Emily at that time about how she was doing physically?
Hey, amazing.
Yes, we both had conversations with
Yeah, it was
each other.
super
It was
amazing.
a lot, and Emily was Mom loves all three of her kids, but Emily and Mom had a special
Hey,
relationship.
Ozzy.
They really did. And before I left, I said, "Are you thinking about harming yourself or others?" She just looked at me and I said, "No, Amy, I wouldn't do that to you. I know what that feels like."
I believe so.
It was hard and sad time. I actually got
I'm
the
just
house
seeing a
ready
lot
for Emily to
of
move in.
different things, but
It was hard.
So after
Lots of thoughts are going through my mind about that.
So after your mom passed away, Emily moved into that condo on Abbey Cross?
Yes, Emily was the executrix of her will, and so I cleaned out Mom's room and donated things
Executor.
to places Mom would want, and
did she just
make
call it
the space for Emily to
executrix?
move
Like
in,
fucking
and she administered the estate from there.
no, don't do that.
Yes.
And so as
No,
the siblings divided up any inheritance, the condo was a portion of her inheritance?
no.
Yeah, we jointly inherited it, and she bought us out.
Going ahead then, after she was living in that condo, was Emily working somewhere?
Yes.
Today,
Emily was
Junior!
working for the state of Ohio.
And you know in what capacity?
I don't remember her job title, but she worked for the Department of Medicare. So,
At some point, did you become aware that Emily knew somebody named Matt Moore?
oh yes,
And can you tell us when you first met Matt?
yes. It was I believe it was December of 2015. It was after Dad died, and Mom called. I was planning to come to Ohio for the Christmas season. I don't remember exactly what day, and I believe my children were with me. But what I remember is Mom saying,
Yep,
"You need to
amazing.
plan on coming in time for dinner because there's someone I want you to meet." And I said, "Really? Who's that?" She said, "His name is Matt, and he's Emily's new boyfriend, and I really like him."
Well, thanks for the
Later on, were you aware of a time when Matt
education light rain and Ozzy.
to Ohio?
Yes, I believe
Executrix.
he lived in Ohio then for a time, and then he left, because I know, yes,
Okay, so you said he lived in Ohio at that time when you met him,
I believe so. I believe he was in Ohio at that time.
and then you said that he left Ohio.
Yes, for a short time, because Emily dated somebody else for a while.
And do you know where Matt went when he left Ohio?
Yes, back to Las Vegas.
At some point after that time in Las Vegas, did Matt move back to Ohio?
Yes.
And what did you know about Matt and Emily's living arrangements when he first came back?
Initially, Matt was living in Emily's apartment, but it could have been that first time. But so, yes and no. Oh, wait, I do know. He was
You're
living
terrible.
at his father's place in Worthington, Ohio. I remember that because Emily sent me an email about, hey, what do you think about Matt and Joey coming to live at the condo? And I responded, I don't think that's a good idea right now because it's technically owned by 3 people. And if anything tragic were to happen, I don't know how all that would work. So it would be better to wait till the estate had closed. And I believe at that point, my recollection is she said Matt and Joey were going to move into her old apartment.
Are you aware at some point then that
Relevant.
Matt did move in with Emily in that condo?
Yes.
And you mentioned somebody named Joey. Who's Joey?
Joey is Matt's son.
How often, after your mom passed away, how often were you around to see the interactions between Matt and Emily?
Not a lot. Her funeral, he was there.
light
Maybe
rain.
one night we went out after that, and then I went back to Alexandria, or back to Virginia.
Were your visits to Ohio less frequent after both of your parents
Yes.
passed away? Did you ever observe interactions between Joey and Emily?
at least twice. So at Mom's, when I was still in town after Mom died, I was there for 3 weeks. So I remember Matt and Joey and Emily and I went to the Doodah Parade. So we interacted then. And then I came back for a Ohio visit in 2019 and in the middle or end of June of 2019. And so I visited with Matt and Joey and Emily then too.
Generally speaking, were you aware of Emily's feelings or emotions about Joey?
She really liked him. She knew he had, one statement she made to me is, I really want to get Matt and Joey get Joey on my healthcare plan so that he can get all of the care that he needs.
Ozzy.
But that was one part of her caretaking, but she also just liked him. But she was also said that he would wake up at odd hours and wake her up before going to work, which annoyed her. He was a teenager. I wasn't surprised.
Did Matt and Emily get married?
Yes.
And you know when that occurred?
Yes, it was August of 2018, so 2018, but it was either the 8th or the 18th. It was all those 8s in a row, I remember.
And how did you find out that wedding occurred?
And no IP,
She
you're
texted
good.
me a photograph, and on my lunch break, I looked at it, and I said, oh, did you get new shoes? Because I thought that's why she was showing me this full-length picture of her. And then I looked at it closer, and I thought, wait a second, they look like they're at an altar. So I just texted her. I said, did you get married? And she wrote back, yes. And that was the extent of that. I'm sure we talked soon thereafter, but that was the initial recollection.
We've talked a lot about Matt Moore. Is Matt Moore present in the courtroom today?
Yes, that is Matthew, yeah.
And can you please point him out and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing? Thank you. Is Matt's son Joey still alive?
No.
And when did he pass away?
It was early July. I think I don't remember, I don't know the exact date, but it was the first few days of July in 2019, just a few weeks after I had visited.
Well, AP, they did forage, so
It was self-inflicted.
Did you return to Ohio for a memorial service for Joey?
I did,
And did you interact with your sister Emily at that time?
yes.
What can you tell us about her emotions, mental state at that time?
She was very distraught and sad. She was very worried about Matt. Just the impact of losing your son so close in time to Matt's mother that passed away, close in time to that too. I think it was January of 2019, but I don't know exactly. But the caretaking part of her it was stressful for her. She actually took many days off work. She used up her annual leave and her sick leave to just be at home and kind of invoke what she called as nature therapy to grow things and be there for Matt.
Were you aware of whether Emily was seeing a therapist after Joey passed away?
Yes, she said that she was seeking a therapist and applying for family leave.
Did you continue to interact with your sister after Joey's death?
Yes.
Talk to her,
Yes.
see her?
In fact, I checked in on a regular basis with her and Matt. I would text, mostly I would text because Emily preferred that. So I don't recall a specific conversation, but I do remember calling and checking on her. And before I left, I flat out asked her, are you thinking about taking your life or harming yourself or others? And she reiterated it again. Amy, I would never do that to you. I know what that feels like, and I would never do that to you.
but you don't know what was in her head.
The beginning of 2020. In your check-ins with Emily, how was she doing emotionally, physically?
Thank you. What?
Can you tell us, how was she doing physically and emotionally when you would speak to her in early 2020?
So early 2020, there were a lot of emotions. I remember she was getting stronger and healthier. She was going to have some pins removed. And in about February of that year, I remember we did have a phone conversation. I remember her saying that she felt better than she had ever in her life, having all of the titanium pins removed. She had one in her tooth, I think, and
How
then
is
an
this not
ankle from the
prejudicial
prior
as hell
accident.
with her picture up
And
this
she
whole
was
time?
lifting weights and working out, and she
It's
said,
very
"You
prejudicial.
need to start doing this." So she got me hooked
I-
on
I-
some weightlifting and, checking in with her to send photos of my progress. Was, kind of part of what was going on in early 2020, and then COVID and many jokes about how are you cleaning your groceries, and some frustrations with what's really true about that.
To your knowledge, had Emily returned to work?
Yes, she returned to work part-time in October of 2019 at the end.
Yes, Jason J.
And at some point she returned full-time, but I don't recall what day.
Ozzy, who are you trying to
Based
bury?
on your interactions with her in early 2020, did you have any concerns about her mental or physical well-being?
No.
I want to turn your attention to May 22nd through the 25th of 2020.
Thank you.
Did you
About damn time.
have a conversation?
Oh, finally, they got the picture removed.
Did you have a conversation with your sister on May 22nd about her plans for the weekend?
Yes. Not a conversation, but a text message.
A text message?
Yes.
And do you remember emotionally what she said about those plans?
Yeah, she was very excited. She had reconnected with a distant cousin who we had met many years before, and she said that she was going to his place for a cookout. And I remember, I don't know if it was in that text, but she had told me they met in a foraging group. And I thought, oh, this is a good combination. Matt and Emily going out foraging, and this cousin going out foraging, and they're going to meet up on Memorial Day. They'll have a perfect dirt milkshake and forage salad. It'll be great. In fact, I think I sent her a
Gross.
picture of a salad in response.
I think that was a shot at you, Dazer.
And so she told you that she was super
Yeah.
excited about that.
Yes.
Did you have a text message exchange with her on the morning of her birthday?
Of course. So I wrote to her as soon as I woke up. I sent a picture of a little pig with a pinwheel out the car. That was something our family always said on the way home. We'd say wee, wee, wee all the way home. So I knew that photo would make her laugh. And I said
Wee!
something to the effect of, hello, we're the same age today. Happy birthday, I'll call you later. And she wrote back to me, I believe it was, woo, woo, 52 and fabulous.
And so was that the morning of her birthday when you
Yes,
sent that
that
text?
was May 24th around 8 a.m.
And how quickly after you had sent her a message did she respond?
Moments, within a few minutes.
Did you attempt to call her later in the day?
Yes, twice.
Were you able to speak to her those 2 times when you called?
No.
Did you see any
I was being the pig
Facebook
on
posts or any kind
that
of other
those
information
commercials.
about where Emily was?
Yes, when I
Bobby?
didn't reach her the second time, I believe that call was around 3 p.m. I thought, where is she? What are they doing today? So I went on Facebook and I saw a picture of her at the Field of Heroes. And I just said, oh, well, they were just out and about.
And do you remember where you saw that photo? Like who had posted it?
Watch it, Bobby.
I believe, I think Matt posted it to Emily's Facebook page because I saw it on Emily's Facebook page.
Your Honor, I remove the strike boss name for speculation. I think Matt is on it. I think the question was, do you know who posted to the page?
To the best of your recollection, do you?
Overruled, go ahead, go ahead. finish.
To the best of my recollection, it was Matt that posted the photo to Emily's Facebook page.
If I may approach it with what's Mark stated it too.
Yes.
Okay, you're right. I did.
Max. Wait! Maxwell!
Yeah?
You're home.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Mrs. A.
Geico.
Hand you a photograph of Mark just stated it too. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
And generally speaking, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, that's Matt and Emily at the Field of Heroes.
And is that the photograph you recall seeing on Emily's birthday in 2020?
Yes, that's one of them, yes.
No. There were multiples of the same type of thing?
Yeah, there was another one of her standing.
You have permission to publish Exhibit 2 to the jury?
Go ahead.
For the record, I'm now showing Exhibit 2 on the overhead. Can you describe again now for the jury now that they can see what it is we're looking at here?
Yes, so that's Matheau Moore and Emily Noble at the Field of Heroes.
And what is the Field of Heroes?
The Field of Heroes is a field where all of these flags are set up on Memorial Day to honor those who gave their lives for our country.
And is that in the city of Westerville?
It is.
After, did you make other attempts to contact your sister on her birthday?
Yes, I sent a series of photos at around 7 or 7:30 that night because I was frustrated she hadn't called me.
And what were those series?
Only on the wacky tobacco.
Just from growing up years, from little to mid-teens, different moments of life. My mother had sent me an envelope with photos, or a relative had, and I just pulled them out because I knew they would represent people and moments in our life that would make her laugh. And
did you get any response to any of those messages that were sent?
no, I didn't.
Is that you described being unable to reach her via
It
phone,
doesn't,
not
but
being
maybe it
responsive to text?
should.
Then, just to make sure I understand the timeline, was the last contact that you had with your sister that 52 and fabulous text that you got in the morning of her birthday?
Yes.
Going on to the next day then, May 25th.
Are we still sped up?
How you were feeling on May 25th, 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
I was surprised I didn't hear from her in the morning, but I
Maybe
knew
they're
that she
just
had
really
plans,
slow.
so I didn't think much about it. And a couple of minutes before 8 p.m., the phone rang, and I knew that was her. She's going to tell me all about their foraged
I have a
picnic, and I picked
sunroof
up
in
the
my
phone
car.
and said, "We're the same age today.
More like a
How are you,
moonroof.
Emily?"
But yeah, I
Whispering
have
on
one
the
in my
display
car.
of my phone.
So you received a call from her phone a few minutes before 8 o'clock.
Correct, at night.
You mentioned that you were a little, surprised you hadn't spoken yet. Why was it surprising to you that you hadn't spoken to her yet?
Because we both were early risers, and that was often when she would call, and I was hoping she would. It was COVID. I was quarantined, and I was hoping she would call.
And how do you describe your level of worry, though, based on what you knew about her plans at that time?
Low level of worry, none.
And so you got that call, and it came up on your phone as being a call from Emily's phone?
Yes.
And you mentioned that you answered it and said, we're the same age, and what did you hear on the other end?
There was a pause, and as I remember it, it was, "Amy, this is Matt. I'm so sorry, Emily's gone."
I'm so sorry, Emily's gone.
Yes.
Had you spoken to Matt on the phone before?
Yes.
You've been around him, we're familiar with his voice?
Yes.
Did you have any question that was Matt who was the one on the other end of the phone?
No.
After he said, "I'm sorry, Emily is gone," how did you react?
I said, "What do you mean she's gone? What did you fight about?" Because that would be the only explanation to me of what he said.
And what was his response when you asked, what did you fight about?
There was just a pause, and it was not a real answer. Just that she's not here. She hasn't been here all day. The police are here looking for her. One of her friends is on the way. It was just a series of statements.
How slow is she talking if this is 1.5?
I
Yes,
know.
I don't know if it was that call, because that call was very brief, but we did speak again later. No, I think it was that call. I said, "Well, I will call some people. Did you go to Jared's for the cookout?" And he said, "No." I said, "Have you called him?" And I don't remember Matt's answer, but I remember that was putting that person on the list of who to call.
What did you do after you received that initial information that Emily was gone?
Well, I had a sense of panic and worry, and I instantly started calling and texting. I think I drafted a little note like, "Emily's missing. Her husband just called and told me. That's all I really know. Is she with you?" And I
Drafting a
copied and
note?
pasted that to this short list of people that I had. And then my phone started ringing off the hook, and
Generally speaking, who were those people? Who were you trying to reach out to?
I probably couldn't recall the whole list off the top of my head, but I know right away that it would have been a neighbor we grew up with. you want me to give names or just?
No, just generally.
So a neighbor we grew up with, who Emily was still in contact, a couple that were very close to my mom and dad, who befriended us also, especially after mom and dad died, a cousin that she'd reconnected with recently, she called her a sister cousin, they were very close, an old friend who'd moved to California for a time, and Emily watched her cat, so I knew that person's name. A couple of friends that I went on her Facebook page, I couldn't remember their names, but I knew their nicknames, and there they were, so I added, a couple of
Hey, Raven.
those people.
Hey,
and,
Raven.
two of the friends that I had met recently in Westerville. So that's about 8 names right there. So I just kind of thought back through three or 4 decades of people and who would right away be somebody who would know me and be able to respond to my question.
I want to go back to the Facebook post that you had seen, showing against Exhibit 2. Did you send anything in response at any time after you had seen this photograph?
Yes, I
Bleeding.
think what I recall is that I sent that, Matt and Emily and I had a Facebook Messenger chat together, and my recollection is I, like, from the page forwarded it, you can go to a Facebook page and then share it in Messenger, and I said, I love this photo, or something to that effect. I think I said, I love this photo, I love you guys, something like that.
Do you remember when that was that you sent that message?
I believe
I
it's
know
May
Dee's.
25th,
I know.
because I remember texting after that to Matt. It looks like both of you have looked at this picture today.
So can you describe for me what that meant to you? What do you mean?
Yeah, so in Facebook Messenger, if you send somebody in a chat, if you post something, like imagine my hand is the chat. So then down below here are the little icons that represent that person's Messenger chat. So I saw 2 little of those.
The
circle
defense isn't
icons. I said,
objecting,
"Are they
Jason,
different?"
so-
And that to me was that both Matt and Emily had seen that picture.
So their Facebook
Well, they're
accounts
kind
had
of screwed
seen
because they look like assholes
what
if
had
they
been sent
object
to
to
them
the
via Facebook.
grieving
Yes.
sister.
Yeah.
When was it that you looked to see if she had seen that photo? Was it before or after the phone call from Matt?
Well, I posted that afterward, but I should be able to see the time that I posted it, but I don't remember. It would have been before. So I would have looked before, I don't recall off the top of my head, but it would be visible in my chat, I think, to some degree, but I don't remember based on the way you're this morning.
Did you have a conversation with Matt after the phone call that he had with you?
Yes.
To tell you that Emily was gone?
Yes.
And as a result of that phone call, did you try to figure out when the last time you had had communication or interaction with your sister?
Yes. And yes.
And did you then send messages to Matt in that same Facebook chat that you had with both
Yes.
Emily and Matt? And did he respond to you?
Yes, a thumbs up.
Did he send you any other messages that time, if you recall?
I don't recall.
You sent
Do you
me
recall receiving
Canadian
any more
Elf
communications from
riding
Emily Noble's
a
Facebook account after
unicorn.
your communications?
I thought it was weird.
What?
I know there were texts from Emily, whether they were between Emily and me or in the chat with the 3 of us, I don't remember.
Would seeing records of the chat between you, Matt, and Emily refresh your recollection as to whether you received any messages from Emily's account after your phone call?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you with some mark for identification purposes as Lisa did at 3.
Kind of.
Take a moment to look through those 4-page documents.
Not the first half an hour of this shit.
No. Oh, that's my baby thing could have been out.
Yep.
I said, love this, love you, love our country. Okay, so just one.
Did she forget the read it to yourself part?
Here, so that's the one I'm talking
Yes.
about.
She must be a MAGA terrorist. She said love our country.
Oh, yes,
Oh, no.
I see now. Yes, I can tell.
Okay.
Took me a minute to
That's okay.
interpret that.
So now you've had an opportunity to see the conversation, do you
Yes.
recall receiving messages from Emily Noble's Facebook?
Yes, I received messages.
Has
from
anyone heard of
Lisa's,
preparation?
Messenger account?
And that
H?
was,
No.
in the timeline of things, after
No,
you
they
had
haven't.
that conversation with Matt about
Yes.
Nicodemus.
Yes.
Turn your
Hey,
attention
Isabel
to,
Rennie.
May 26th.
Hey, Isabel.
Did you
Just got timed out from a Christian
did you receive
stream. What the
communication
hell did you
from people who were
do?
interested in going out?
Yeah, that's weird.
And did you communicate that to
I probably shouldn't have said what the
Matt
hell
in that same Facebook
from a Christian stream, but
Yes.
you get what I mean.
And what was his response to you talking about a search party?
This I remember. He said he didn't want to go out and look to find her dead under a tree somewhere. Isn't that what search parties are for? And he said he wanted to just let the police search for her.
I mean, that sounds fair.
Prior to your sister going missing, how would you characterize your relationship with Matt?
Oh, I really enjoyed Matt and his company and my visits there. He's well-spoken, polite, and kind. If my mother liked him, that was enough for me when I first met him. And after they were married, I said, I have a nickname for you. I already have a favorite older brother, and besides that, you're not older than I am, but I have a nickname for you. You're going to be my more noble brother, which was a play on his name and my sister's name.
Did that relationship with Matt change in the days following Emily's birthday?
Not at first, but yes.
Wait, you guys watching from? No, watch.
Oh no.
Yes, he just asked me to take on roles that I was not willing to take on.
How would you
But
characterize
Uranus is a planet.
conversations
It
with
is.
him in those months after Emily was missing?
Well, in the initial days, it was cordial. We were, sad together. We were strategizing how to look for her, how to keep track of all the people that wanted to look and all the places that people were looking. And there were kind of two camps of people. There were those who only wanted to look for a body and those that only wanted to look for a living person, a missing person. And I'm doing both. I spent many hours a day. So we had check-in calls once a day or every other day, kind of saying, where have you looked? Where have these people looked?
They just don't get jokes,
and
Isabel.
I got a map kind of set up to automate some of that process to make it easier to keep track of where
We
people
like
were
your
looking.
jokes, Isabel.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, he said, the police have my phone.
I mean, that's hilarious.
Can you help me set it up?
Uranus?
I switched from one type of phone to another, and I was able to answer some of those frustrating questions about how do you take a screenshot? How do you turn it off? Things like that. And so that was part of our conversations. And then it was kind of frustrating, too, because I was asked, can you give me a list of places to go and look? And I would give him a list, and then he'd follow up a couple days later. Can you give me that list again? I'm like, wait, nobody's looked there yet. I've told 5 people they don't need to look in that park or put up a poster there. It's kind of
Yes,
frustrating,
Dees.
but, given the circumstances.
So she tried to micro Karen the search effort.
Tragedy struck.
Yes.
The funeral was a horrible display of the worst of everybody's personalities in some ways.
I would have been too, Isabel.
But yeah.
When I first asked you about the change in relationship, you a conversation about him asking you to take on a role.
Yes.
Do you remember specifically what that was? that he was asking you to do?
Leading.
Yes, it was like the second week of June, approximately. I remember he called and said,
fuck's sake.
I've appointed you to my spokesperson to the media, or I want you to be my spokesperson to the media. And I said, no, I'm not going to take on that role.
And how did he react to that?
He was quiet and no real reaction. And as I recall, we didn't talk much longer after that, during that specific call.
Did you have another call where he asked you to take on a different role?
Yes, within the next day or so, day or two, he said, I've decided that I want you to be my spokesperson to the police.
And how did you react when he asked you to do
I
that?
said, absolutely not. That is literally what you need to be doing. I'm giving them information that I have and that I know and asking them questions that I have, and you need to do that too.
And how did he react when you told him that?
He repeated it, and I said no again, and then in a menacing tone, he said, you need to think long and hard about whether you ever want to see your sister again. And I hung up and did not speak
Oh,
verbally
give me
with him
a
again.
fucking
Oh,
break.
yeah, I doubt that.
Verbal phone
I
call.
doubt it.
Did you have any other contact with him via text or messenger?
That's
or anything?
bullshit.
Yes, he texted me a couple of weeks later, again in Facebook Messenger, and was threatening my family with lawsuits
What?
for things that people were posting on Facebook. And I said, could you please send me links to this or screenshots or something so that I know what you're talking about, because maybe they're not related to me, or if they are, I'll talk to them. And he couldn't produce that, and just I don't remember the end of the conversation, but it was essentially, this is what could happen or what I intend to do or something along those lines. I think he said defamation was the word he used.
And was that the
Isn't
end
that
of your
hearsay?
Wow.
communications with the defendant?
Well,
No, we
maybe
had a
not.
text exchange after
I mean,
that.
And what did you
yeah.
think about that?
He said, I miss our talks. And
I mean,
said, miss
it's
my
a defendant,
sister.
so I
He
don't.
said, can't you call me? I said, no, call Detective Grubbs, and I gave him Detective Grubbs' phone number.
Did you have any other interactions with him after that time?
No. Well, not via text or anything like that, no.
He didn't ask you by
I want to
text.
turn your attention to September of
He
2020.
asked you if you
Yeah.
had any more interactions.
Were you aware of people who were still out searching for Emily?
Yes.
And did you know any of those people?
Yes.
Specifically, was there a high school classmate
Yes.
of Emily? And who was that?
Lisa
Okay,
Gordish.
Kieran.
Had you talked with them about
I did not go
where
to
they were
January
looking,
6th.
what kind of things they
Thank
were trying to do?
God. I was getting
Lisa
my
wrote
car
to me in
fixed,
August,
the
and
dim
she has
killed.
a sister, and she
I get my
was in
key
Emily's
fixed,
class,
had
but
it
we
on.
actually
I was like,
had
hey,
class
I
together.
went there.
And she said, my sister and I were talking about
Huh.
how you and your
I
mom
almost went
and
to.
Emily would take
I
bike
decided
rides or go on
not
walks
to
together,
at the,
and we just want to get a
literally
sense
the
of
last
what that was like. Could you send me a few of those walks? So I drew them out on Google Maps.
Yeah,
and
AP,
took
I
screenshots
ran
and
that through in my head.
put out the steps
Since
for it
he's
and sent those to her.
if
So I
he's
called them
saying it,
6.
it's not
And I made a
hearsay.
copy of that and sent it by email, I think, to the detectives and said, this group wants to look at some of these routes just for your awareness. And at the end of, when she got to the 5th or 6th, when she wrote
It's
to me and
definitely
said,
Karen say.
Yes.
Let's go. Move on. So you had communications with Lisa
Yes.
about where they were going to look. Okay. Did you receive a phone call on September 16th, 2020?
oh, yes, many,
Generally
Oh, yeah.
speaking, what was the topic of that initial phone call?
that remains were found. They found
Drive
her,
safe, Shenny.
is what a lot of people thought.
Yep.
Have you seen any photographs of the remains that were recovered?
No,
Do you know any of the details about how your sister was found?
yes, a little bit. I listened to the,
Objection, Your Honor. The lack of foundation, how does she know details? She just said she didn't see photos.
She was in the middle, I think, of saying how she knows, but I can ask her to defend.
We need to find out. Is it?
Did you obtain the 911 call that was made when the remains were found?
yes,
And have you also read the Montgomery County Coroner's report?
yes,
But beyond that, you don't know a lot of the specific details
No.
about any of the things that were found. Did you send Detective Grubbs an email 2 days after the remains were found?
Objection. This lawyer's really bad at his job.
Yes.
I wrote emails to him a lot, so I don't know about the specifics of this one.
Definitely a Karen.
Were you generally
I
aware
sent a
that,
lot of emails.
the remains that were found hanging?
Objection, Your Honor, is pending, because she doesn't know the details.
I guess, were you aware?
Well, I'll let her answer the question.
I was aware of what the 911 call said.
Okay. If I have one moment.
You'll probably have to slow it down if it's cross.
This lawyer's bad.
Yeah.
This lawyer's as bad as that cop is Humpty Dumpty.
Ask Detective Grubbs for a full investigation into the circumstances of.
Relevant.
Yes, I do remember sending an email about that.
Why did you ask for that?
Because I was absolutely convinced that,
Objection, Your Honor, as to why she asked that. Completely irrelevant.
I'll sustain that. Go ahead. Next question.
And just one other thing I want to go back and make sure it was clear.
You just said one
When
other
you
thing.
were discussing
Ugh.
having received messages
What an asshole.
from Emily Noble's Facebook account, were you
Typical
aware
lawyer.
who those messages were from?
Fucking lie.
Were those messages from your sister, or were they from somebody else?
no, I assumed in the context they were from Matt.
Yeah, it's
So
the
it wasn't-
shithole down south.
You don't believe you
maybe.
ever received another message from Emily?
Your Honor, ask and answer.
She has answered this. She thought they came from Matt, if that's your question.
And so the last communication that you had with your sister was the text message on the morning of her birthday?
Correct.
I have no further questions this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a 10-minute stretch and restroom break. We'll be right back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Please recall your court's admonition.
10 minutes. All right. And then I figured we'd do cross, and that where we'll probably cut it for today's
September
show.
18th.
Because we've already been 2 hours. Damn it. Fuck. One was too far, one was too slow. So you're just going to have to wait, because I'm not going to keep moving it.
Well, it looks like the jury's coming in, so.
Thanks. Have a seat.
It's a great shot.
All right.
Speculation.
Amy, Diane Menashe on behalf of Matt Moore. We had an opportunity just now. I told you that I was going to ask you some questions about the email that you sent to Detective Grubb. Is that right?
Yes.
And I gave you an opportunity to review the email should you need to refresh your recollection as to what the email said.
Yes.
And you indicated that you had reviewed the email and you knew what it said.
Yes.
So I've got some questions about it. The email that I'm talking about was sent on September 18th.
We're going to mark that.
No, you're right. The email that you sent to Detective Grubbs was on September 18th, 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was 2 days after Emily's remains were found.
Yes.
The title of that email, as I'm sure you recall.
Which guy in the light blue shirt, Light Rain?
September 16th.
Yes.
You write to the detective, do you not? With "Good morning." Following
I
is a
think that's the
statement based
defendant.
on my
Oh,
professional
that guy?
Oh,
knowledge
that
and
guy.
personal interaction
Oh.
with Emily. I urge those investigating to look beyond suicide.
I don't know,
Do you remember
brother.
writing Detective Grubbs out?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you go on in the next paragraph, do you not, to talk about your qualifications and your education, right?
Yes.
You mentioned that you have a master's degree, that you have training in mental health first aid USA and youth mental health first aid as well.
Yes.
And then you go on to email Detective Grubbs. What it looks like is 1 full page single space, 2 full pages single space, and then a few lines on the next
That's
page.
easy. Have you
Yes.
heard of the domino Ohio theory?
I mentioned your master's degree because you would agree with me, would you not, Amy, that memory does not get better with time.
Totally doesn't exist. I was just wondering if you heard of
Yes.
it.
Okay. Because this was written 2 days after Emily's remains were found.
Yes.
And today's date is what?
August 17th, 2021.
So between
2022.
22. So between September 18th, 2020, and today's date,
Oh.
would you agree with me? It's about 2 years.
Yes.
So let's talk about
They
the email.
did replace
Because I heard you on your
that beady
direct
potato
examination
thumb.
talk about 2 different statements that Matt Moore told you allegedly on a phone. Do you remember your testimony about Matt says, quote, "she's gone"?
Yes.
I trust then, 2 years ago, you included that in your email to Detective.
Potato Thumb had to go take a nap.
You didn't, did you?
It's hard work being a potato.
No.
Ask Joe Biden.
Nor did you include 2 years ago when you wrote a thorough email to Detective Grubbs asking him to follow up on the investigation. Did you include the statement, let me get to it because I want to make sure I have it, when he allegedly told you, you better do that if you want to see your sister again. Do you remember telling the jurors that statement?
Yes.
And that is also not in this incredibly detailed email to Detective Grubbs, correct?
Correct.
Even though, Amy, in the email to Detective Grubbs, you talk extensively about Matt and your communications with him.
Yes.
Okay, Matt has a gray shirt on. I see what you're saying, Light
It's
Rain.
about Matt.
He just happens to be
Would you like to refresh your
poor
recollection to
bastard
the email?
sitting right
I have a
there.
copy.
Oh shit, can I say that?
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Mark,
Okay.
Your Honor, just to refresh, but I'll mark these defendants. Did you wish us to use numbers or letters?
We use numbers.
Okay. Defendants do that. Amy, if I may approach. China witness has previously been marked as defendant's exhibit A. Amy, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what does it appear to be? Just a
An email from me to Detective Grubbs.
Sergeant
And
Bean
when I've been
Dip?
asking you all of these questions the last 5 minutes, is that the email that you believe you've been talking about?
Yes.
And if you,
We
if
get
you
every
can,
man in Ohio
turn to the
now.
second page of the email. And
Yeah, that's
first
right, fuck
sentence
you,
is
Ohio.
what you asked Matt. Would you agree with me? Matt's name is in the first sentence.
Yes.
AP.
Second paragraph, first sentence of second paragraph, talks about Matt's traumatic brain injury and how he struggled with adjusting after Joe died. Do you agree with me on that?
I did say that.
And then in that paragraph, and I just asked you to scan, you say Matt frequently. Do you not? Throughout the second paragraph, Matt's treatment, knowing from Matt. Third paragraph, first word is Matt, is it not?
Yes.
And then the next paragraph talks about Joey's suicide. Is that right?
Yes.
And Joey is Matt's son.
Yes.
And then the last paragraph, of course, again, about your urging of the detective. In the fourth line, you're talking about Matt again, are you not? So in every paragraph on the second page, Matt is referenced.
Yes.
But nowhere in the entire email is either of these statements that today you told the jury Matt made to you on a phone call.
Correct.
And of course, when you're testifying about text messages or instant messages, we have the actual message, right?
Yes.
And so there's no question as to whether or not someone said what they did because it's right there.
Yes.
Subsequent to September 18th of 2020, you haven't at any point in time reached out to Detective Grubbs and given him the information about those 2 phone calls that you told this jury about. Isn't that true?
That is not true.
Oh, so is there?
Wait, please repeat your question. Subsequent to this,
Yeah, since September 18th of 2020, have you sat down with Detective Grubbs?
I have talked to him on the phone, yes. I haven't,
Have you sat down with him?
no,
And in preparation for your testimony today, did you meet with Detective Grubbs?
no,
Did you meet with the prosecutors?
yes,
And how many times?
Objection, relevance.
It probably is, but I'll let her answer the question.
once,
Okay. And so
Try this
since
full
email,
mash.
right, you haven't sat down with Detective Grubbs.
correct,
You would agree, since this email, you have not emailed Detective Grubbs again, is that correct?
I don't recall.
Correct. I'm gonna go back. And maybe I'll go here, start here, Amy. I want to talk, you talked about your sister. So the jury is clear. She goes missing on May 25th, 2020. You are living in DC. The last time you had been to Ohio was the summer of 2019.
Correct,
So a year prior was the last time that you had seen her.
yes,
So let's now go to May 25th of 2020. You do not come to Ohio that day? Correct?
Correct.
Nor the 26th?
correct,
Nor the 27th?
correct.
Nor the 28th?
Yeah, we were in a pandemic and we were quarantined,
You came to Ohio not at all that summer.
correct,
And so the communications that you're talking about with Matt and what you told his jurors about how you were managing searches, you were never in Ohio searching for your sister, correct?
correct.
Oh.
Damn.
Have you even been to the Abbey Cross house where Matt and Emily and Joey lived? Did you go there?
When?
When they all lived there together?
Yes,
And that was in the summer of 19 when you came for Joey's funeral?
yes. And the 2 weeks prior to that,
And in June of 2000, at the end of June of 2019, I
Yes.
just told the jurors you came to visit.
yes,
And then Joey killed himself.
yes,
And I noticed during your direct examination, you used the word self-inflicted. Joey hung himself, correct?
yes,
In a park,
yes,
from a tree.
yes,
Emily loved Joey.
yes,
And when you came to the funeral, you saw how distraught she was.
yes,
And Joey's suicide
Yes, Raven.
was an event after a significant other number of deaths in Emily's life. Isn't that right?
yes,
I want to go through some of them.
I wouldn't
You
move
talked
to
about her
Ohio
friend in
to
the
make
90s,
sure anybody
Emily
was
had
dead.
to be done.
As soon
There
as
was
I
other
moved
friends
to
that Emily
Ohio,
had
they'd
who
be
talked
dead to
about she
me.
would sort
So
of take someone on and sort of like a bird, take someone under their wing and care for them, and then they passed. Is that right?
yes,
And then you talked about how she met Mark in 2011. And it stood out to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, Amy, that you talked about how happy Emily and Mark were together.
yes,
How they dressed alike, and the bag was even sort of similar, and they were taking on some characteristics of one another.
yes,
And fair to say, I assume, Amy, that you, based on your observations and seeing them together, you thought they were happy.
yes,
And you thought that of the couple, Amy and Mark? right? You thought that as a couple they were happy?
Emily and Mark, yes.
I'm sorry, Emily and Mark. You thought that they were happy as a couple, right?
Yes.
And then Mark killed himself.
Yes.
And that was obviously a surprise to you.
Yes.
And he shot himself in the head, did he not?
I don't know.
Did you go to Mark's
I know
funeral?
it was a gunshot wound. I don't know where.
And did you go to Mark's funeral?
Yes.
And then after Mark's suicide, Emily had a good friend kill herself as well, did she not?
Not right. Who?
In 2012, her friend?
I know of somebody more recently than that, but I don't dispute that that may have happened.
Who do you know more recently than that?
A high school classmate.
And the high school classmate is separate from her brother-in-law. That
Holy
also killed
shit.
In 2017, is that right? Her brother-in-law by marriage.
Yeah, a lot of death.
Mark's brother.
Mark Farmlow's brother? I do not know that he died by suicide.
And if you know Mark's parents, they died by suicide?
I don't know.
And of course, Joe.
Yes.
And in between all of that, and and the state asked you about it.
I don't think, excuse me, Mark Farmlow's mother isn't dead, I don't think.
Okay, she's alive.
Well, you said that she committed suicide.
Tell me if you think she's alive.
I thought she was alive.
Okay. And his brother?
I believe he's deceased.
Okay. With respect to the other kind of deaths that Emily experienced, right?
It's already-
Separate from her own.
it's already been mentioned.
In 15 and 16, and Amy, tell me if I'm wrong, but your parents also passed, your dad?
Yes.
And then I think your mother was tragically killed in a car accident.
Yes.
And that was in 17.
16.
16. And then you're aware, just before Joey's death, that Matt's mom died.
Yes.
This bitch killed more people than Osama bin
That's a
Laden.
significant amount of loss.
It is.
Oh.
Significant amount of suicide.
Yes.
I want to go back to, we can, sort of some of the, and I know your testimony was that you weren't here, and we can just leave the lights off if you don't mind, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. I know that you weren't here, but just generally, you're familiar with where Abbey Cross Lane was and where Emily and Matt lived?
Yes.
And you're aware, are you not, that Emily's remains were found in this wooded area right here?
Yes.
Have you seen this map before?
This particular
did.
map?
Yeah.
I've seen, yes, on Google, not this particular map till today, but yes, I've seen Google Maps.
And I asked you because I'm just wondering, I assume you're aware that on May 25th, after Matt called the 911 and reported Emily missing, that Matt took the detectives along this red line right here and told the detectives that this was Emily's favorite
Too
place
many
to walk
people
and
like
go
green.
in here and forage.
No, I'm not aware of that.
You're not aware of that?
No.
You talked about how you were aware that Emily, after Joey's suicide, started to go to counseling.
Yes.
And I assume, based on your testimony, you knew that when she went to counseling because she reported difficulty after the tragic loss, and she was traumatized by more death and loss in her life. Does that sound about right?
Those were not the words she used with me.
Okay. So she told you that she went to counseling. She started to go to counseling.
Yes.
And that was after Joey died.
Yes.
And she told you that because of what she was experiencing as a result of Joey's death, she was going to apply for family medical leave. Is that right?
Correct.
And she did just that.
Yes.
And she didn't work for 3 or 4 months. Is that right?
Correct.
And I assume you know, based on your testimony about your relationship and closeness with Emily, that she had a history of depression.
No.
You didn't know that she had suffered from depression and had been diagnosed with depression?
No.
And that's not something that she shared with you?
Not that particular issue, no.
I remember when you were describing Emily on your direct examination, and you said that she was courageous and she loved nature. There was a point in time when she stopped going to therapy, was there not? In 2019?
I was not aware of that, no.
So you didn't, Emily never told you that she just stopped going to therapy at the end of 2019?
No.
And so was it your understanding then, as her sister living in Washington DC, that she was still going to therapy up until her death?
Yes.
if she wasn't? Would you have wanted to know that, Amy?
No.
Let's talk about Matt. Because I know the state asked you about your relationship with Matt. And I know I asked you about May 25th and 26th and 27th, and we know that you weren't in Ohio.
Raven, they found her
Fair to say
in
that
a
the
tree.
first time that you communicate with Detective Grubbs is when you call on June 11th. Does that sound right?
Yes. I believe that's correct.
I just want to make sure that the juror understands the timeline.
No, I communicated with him before. What is the significance of June 11th?
Well, the way that it goes is that I ask you the questions. If you don't know, just let me know.
Oh, I don't.
Come on, Longcock. This isn't me.
Oh,
One moment while I think.
That was Longcock.
I will say in early June, I called Westerville Police Department, or I spoke with Detective Grubbs in early June. I do not remember the date.
And fair enough, because it's some time ago, right? It's obviously, as we talked about, almost 2 years ago. But in June of 2020, there was a call between you and Detective Grubbs, was there not?
Yes.
And you realized, Amy, that when Detective Grubbs was calling you, that your sister had been missing for a week or two or an extended period of time.
Yes.
And you knew that you were talking to the individual that was the lead investigator on the case, did you not?
Yes.
And you told Detective Grubbs, did you not?
yeah, similar
that you
story,
thought
Raven.
Emily had gotten angry and left, but you couldn't figure out what she would be mad at since Matt Moore was a grizzly bear. Remember telling Detective Grubbs?
That sounds about right. At that point in time, yes.
So as of June-ish, early June, your sister's been missing a week or 2 weeks.
Yes.
You talked to the detective, and you said that you think that she got angry and left. Not sure why, but the reason why you're not sure why is because Matt's a grizzly bear. Like, he's a nice guy, huh?
Yes.
And there's some questions about the relationship of Emily and her brother, and I asked you this because you mentioned that you have a sibling, an older brother.
Yes.
And isn't it true that Detective Grubbs asked you about trauma in Emily's life that she may have experienced with respect to sexual abuse?
Yes.
Specifically, he asked, specifically, he asked you about her being sexually abused by family members. Do you remember that?
Objection. Relevant.
I'm not sure. Can we first, we don't know.
That was obviously a sore spot.
Yeah. I mean, it would go to
make this go ahead. But it's gonna be back. Whoever was on screen. So I know as soon as I skip ahead, they're going to be back. So we're just going to keep going. Dana did strike a nerve there.
mm-hmm.
I don't know the backstory.
Diane.
One, but
Diane. Her name's Diane Manash. Manash?
And I know that you had just told the jury that you weren't aware that Emily had an abuse.
she's Dana nestled to
Were you aware
18 I know.
that Emily had any history
Oh, yeah.
of abuse, or sexual abuse?
Objection.
Sustained.
And in your conversation with Detective Grubbs, did you not? He told you to reach out to Moore being Matt, to see if he would talk to him. Do you remember that?
Please repeat that.
Sure.
Without, you please use names. Could you please use
Detective
names?
Moore is talking to you, Amy Thomas. I'm sorry, Detective Grubbs is
Yes.
talking to you, Amy Thomas.
Yes.
In early June. And he says to you, will you reach out to Matt for him? Does he not?
I don't recall that.
You don't.
No.
Because I asked you that because you said to the
Yes.
jury.
Correct. Yes.
So it's actually Detective Grubbs that asked you to be a liaison between Matt and the police.
For medical records, yes.
Because you told the jurors how Matt had asked you to play a
you're
role.
lying,
I thought that was the word you
bitch.
used in direct. Tell me if I'm wrong. Is that the word you used, Amy?
Yeah, Matt asked me, I believe I spoke to Detective Grubbs prior to speaking to Matt about that.
Oh, it's coming, Dees.
So it first comes from Grubbs. Will you,
Correct.
Amy, go to Matt for me?
Correct. But I don't remember that, but it's possible. Honestly, I don't remember.
Okay. Because your memory of that event has faded?
Just give me a moment to think.
Take all the time.
Do you have a date for that?
It's the same June conversation that we were talking about earlier with Detective Grubbs.
The same Jew conversation?
If my
June.
I do remember a conversation like that. I remember it
That makes
before
more
the
sense.
conversation with Matt. Because that's what made me frustrated when Matt started asking for this relationship.
Because you thought you were being put in the middle.
Yes,
Yeah, and you were frustrated by that.
yes,
Okay. I want to talk about your statement that you made on direct about you trying to give Matt some grace
yes.
after Emily went missing because you saw Matt suffering.
Yeah, Dees, I'll
when Joey
DM
died.
you it. You're my number one homie, so I don't want you to
And you
miss
saw
it.
Emily suffering when Joey died.
Yes,
And Joey's suicide, hanging himself from a tree, was about 10 months before Emily is found hanging from a tree. Is that right?
yes,
And you know, because you've suffered loss, and I'm sorry truly about your parents, you've suffered loss. Grief can look different in everyone, can it not?
yes,
And sometimes, and I heard what you said about that funeral with a relative of yours, sometimes grief can take a gentle form, and sometimes it can take a different form, right? We're all different.
yes.
There is no playbook on how we grieve with loss, is there?
No,
Despite I know you talked about the list back in time when you gave it to Emily, you know, these are things you can do to help you move forward, right?
Yes.
But there is no, Amy, a playbook that says if we do these 8 things, we will be okay.
no,
And as someone that has suffered from grief and significant loss, you would agree with me, would you not, that it's not just when the loss hits that matters. It's triggers that happen, birthdays, holidays, a song on the radio. It could be anything, and it's almost the worst when it's least expected.
yes.
Am I missing why? We haven't determined that yet, I don't think.
Just want to ask you about
No, this is only the
some of
first
medical
witness.
information you gave about Emily. She had the pins removed.
Yes.
I think it was is the right ankle. Which ankle was it? Do you remember?
No,
One ankle.
Unfortunately
She had broken her
not.
ankle, had she not? And she had surgery on it.
correct. I don't know about surgery. She'd broken it. Well, yes, yes.
Because the pins were the surgery.
The pins were the surgery.
So she had gotten the pins out, and after Joey's death, she was trying to take better care of herself, right? She was trying to
Yes.
get healthy again.
Yes,
And I know when you were asked by the state to describe her physically, she was like 95 pounds, 98 pounds, under 100. Does that sound right?
I did not talk about that today.
No, I'm asking you.
Yes, she was about 100 pounds, 5 feet tall and about 100 pounds.
And were you aware,
Yep,
did you know
he's-
she had like the elbow break?
I don't recall that.
Fair enough. You do, though, recall, and I know you told the jurors about how she had, over the years, taken to what you described as nature therapy.
Yes,
And fair to say that even in Emily's text messages or your communications with her, that's an expression that she used, right?
Yes.
Nature therapy. She loved to go on walks. You said that you told the jurors that she was an early morning person. Is that right?
yes,
She loved to forage.
yes.
And tell the jurors what you mean by forage.
As I understand it, it's finding edibles in their natural location. So, yeah. So you go,
Weed in the
mushroom
weeds?
hunting is one example.
Yeah, so you tell me if I'm wrong, foraging is you look for mushrooms that you can actually eat that won't harm you.
Correct? You look for greens, like dandelion greens that you can eat. We grew up pulling wild onions from the stream, eating them.
And this foraging was something that she had really come to love,
Yes,
and something that she did with Matt.
yes,
And it was something that they shared together.
yes.
She found peace in the nature, did she not, Amy?
Yes.
Well, she became part of nature.
You were asked, I know, about Facebook messages.
What? They found her
that
in the
you had with
field.
Emily.
Yes, that was bad
Remember that line
though.
of questioning during your direct?
Yes.
I just want to make
It
sure
was
that
funny.
you and I agree, Amy, that nowhere in your Facebook messages with Emily does she ever say that Matt is mean to her, right?
No.
Does she say Matt hates her?
No.
Matt wants her dead?
No.
She talks about how does she not, that with COVID, she was working remotely.
Yes.
And you write, and I mean before May 24th and 25th, you write often, I love you both.
Yes.
She talks to you, though, about how Matt coated a shepherd's hook that held a bird feeder, right, with Vaseline, and she joked that Matt actually didn't understand the ancient secret to keeping squirrels out of the bird food.
Yes.
And that's just on May 11th, just a week or two before.
Yes.
That's what how she's describing Matt, is that right?
Yes.
And then I want to go to the messages that you were asked about by Mr. Slee. You told the jurors this message where he talked about the woods, right? That he's not ready to find her in the woods. Do you remember
Yes.
that? Are you a parent? I won't ask you about your children. But.
Yes.
And Joey was Matt's biological child.
Yes.
And are you aware that his other child had died of a disease at a very young age?
Yes.
And so his
Holy
second child
shit.
is dead in the woods.
Yes.
So
There's a
it's
lot
from
of
that
death.
context that I want to make sure the jurors know exactly what was written.
They've had more people die than
You
I've
asked him
known.
if he wants to meet you somewhere to search, and he wrote, did he not? I am not ready to think that she is dead lying in the woods someplace. And that's what search parties are for, to look for bodies. But if everyone thinks it's for the best, then yes. Isn't that what Matt actually wrote, Emily?
Yes.
And then you wrote, sigh.
Yes.
I know. I'm still hoping a couple of her friends know something. They haven't responded yet. And then Matt says, I'm going to stay home and let the police investigate. They have her phone. I will keep you posted. Try not to worry. And then later he writes that his dad Palmer,
Yes.
is at the house, and so he can now go search. Remember that?
Yes.
Because he didn't want the house to be left empty in case Emily
Objection,
came
Your
home.
Honor, speculation.
Withdraw. And then you asked about the clothes that she was wearing when you left. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And he said he did not know.
Yes.
Matt called you every day after short missing,
Almost, yes.
constantly communicated with you as the sister of Emily,
Yes.
keeping you updated on what was going on, or at least checking in.
No.
Did you answer his call?
Yes.
I know that you were shown a picture of Emily. Just so we can sort of set the stage, Amy, we could. This picture was posted.
This is Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2, showing the witness was remarked to say it's Exhibit 2. This picture was posted on May 25th, or May 24th, which is your testimony?
I commented on it on May 25th.
But it was posted on May 24th.
I don't recall.
And your comment, as you told the jury, was love this photo, love you both, or love you guys.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure the jury sees this, though. I'm zooming in for a reason. It appears that Emily is wearing two necklaces there, does it not?
Yes.
And the shirt of Matt's, it's a plaid shirt, red, blue, white.
Yes.
And it appears from the photo, and tell me if you can't tell, but that Matt's arm is extended.
Yeah, look, yes.
And he's smiling.
Yes.
And your sister seems happy there, does she not?
Yes.
At any point in time, and let me just show you this picture too. Previously marked as defendant's Exhibit B, if I may, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Amy, tell me if you recognize that picture, if you've ever seen that before.
Yes.
And what is that picture that I've just shown you marked as Defendant's Exhibit B?
This is the other picture at Field of Heroes I was remembering of Emily standing there.
And if I can, I just want to zoom this in. And it's not the best photo, but I promise you, Amy, it's no fault of my own. Emily's not wearing pants in that photo, is she?
She's wearing a mini skirt.
Damn.
Right, and a t-shirt that at least covers her shoulder.
Yes.
And that necklace, that longer necklace that you see on her.
Yes.
She loved that. Was it? It was her birthstone, was it not?
I don't know.
And if I could zoom in on the shoes, again, it's not the best picture, but do they appear to you, Emily, to be tennis shoes? I'm sorry, Amy.
No, they look like hiking shoes.
Like little boots,
Yes.
but definitely not tennis shoes. One moment, Your Honor.
Nazi fags.
Amy, I know that the prosecutor asked you at the end of your direct examination if you have been provided other details about the investigation or seeing photos, and your answer is no.
Correct.
And so I know in your email to Detective Grubbs, the September 18th, 2020 email, you urged him, look carefully at the evidence, including footprints in the soil, fibers in her hair, fibers on her clothing, digital evidence on her phone, her laptop, and that of her spouse. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Because all of those things to you, Amy, could have led to an important determination, right?
Yes.
And could have answered some questions.
I hope.
And is it your testimony today that you've never been provided with the information that all of those things were looked for and nothing was found?
Objection. Misstates the evidence.
I'll answer that.
Could you please restate the question?
I'll break it out. Footprints in the soil, fibers in the hair. Approach, please. That you asked Detective Grubbs to do, right? To look for trace evidence, right? That's what you were saying you wanted so desperately the police department to look for, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've never been updated as to whether those things were found or not?
Correct.
Nothing further?
How you doing, Amy? Hard to take a quick look at an email and be asked a bunch of questions about it?
Yes.
You were asked if you had an opportunity to look at it. You had a brief chance to review it, is that right?
Yes.
And then you were asked a bunch of questions about what was or was not in the email.
Yes.
And you answered, if I may approach this one. I marked a copy of the same email. It was a defense exhibit A, but I'm going to mark it as stays exhibit 4 as well, so that none of the parts are blocked off with the sticker. Just for the record, stays exhibit 4, that same email we were just talking about.
Yes.
And you were asked if you recalled whether there was anything in the email about, first of all, the statement that the defendant made to you when you first made the phone call.
Yes.
I would like you to take a look at the first paragraph on the bottom, the first page of that exhibit. Was that
Oh, I did say it.
email written when this was fresher in your mind?
Yes.
And do you recall exactly what you said to Detective Grubbs in the email? Without reading it, do you recall
No.
exactly what's in there?
No.
Does that email represent a true and accurate depiction of what you said to Detective Grubbs at the time?
Yes.
I would like you then to read what you wrote to Detective Grubbs at the bottom of that first page with regard to the phone call you received from Matt Moore.
Should I begin with when my phone rang?
Yes, ma'am.
When my phone rang May 25th, her phone number appeared. Naturally, I assumed it was her calling for our special conversation. It was her spouse, Matt Lyman Moore. He said that he was sorry Emily was gone. He said she'd been missing since that morning. That made no sense to me.
And so, Amy, when you have an opportunity to actually read the email, you did, in fact, put to Detective Grubbs that that was the statement that the defendant made to you when he first called you to let you know.
Yes.
Continuing to the top of page 2 of that exhibit. Did you also specifically tell Detective Grubbs that you asked the defendant what they had argued about?
Yes.
So now that you've had an opportunity to actually read the email, did you tell Detective Grubbs the same things about that phone call that you testified to today?
Yes.
I want to continue talking about this email. You were asked on a bunch of occasions where Matt's name appears. You remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember any specifically some of the things that you talked about that Emily had shared with you about her marriage?
No. I know I talked about them. I'm not.
And again, would this email represent your recollection that you wrote down at the time, which would be
Yes.
would be a true and accurate representation of what you recall?
Yes.
You were asked also that if Emily had ever messaged you things about Matt being mad or other things of that, but is that the only way you communicated with Emily?
No, she did text me one word that I understood in context, but I was not questioned about that.
I'll come back in a second, but as far as, you also have phone conversations with your sister?
Yeah, infrequently. To be honest, we texted more than we spoke on the phone.
And that's fair. Was text messages the only way you ever communicated?
No,
Had Emily shared with you some struggles in her marriage?
only one.
And what was it?
That was vodka.
And what did that mean to you?
That was the word she texted to me, and that it meant to me that
Projection as to what it meant to her? Speculation.
Well, if you can present a foundation for that, I'll let you do so, but we'll determine whether she can answer that.
Stupid lawyer.
When you received the word vodka, without saying what it meant to you, why did it mean something?
because I asked Emily if Matt understood a joke that she had described to me, and
That's
she said
interesting.
no, and I said why not, and she said because vodka.
And did you, in your email to Detective Grubbs, relate that issue about Matt's drinking vodka?
I believe I did. Yes.
Again, would reviewing that
Yes.
help refresh? I hand you again, states it before, starting with the
There.
second sentence of that second
Yes,
paragraph.
I did write that. She did not like her husband's use of vodka, and I surmised it interfered with his thinking. And then I give the example of that text I was describing.
Okay. Amy, you were also asked on cross-examination about calling Matt a big grizzly bear. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And you were read from a portion of what Detective Grubbs had written down about your phone conversation.
yes,
Was that the entire conversation that you had with Detective Grubbs that time? You just called him a grizzly bear and that was the end of it?
I doubt it. I don't recall.
Okay. You're not sure if there were any other discussions that you had with him at that time?
At that particular day, I don't recall.
Okay. You were also asked a lot of questions on cross-examination about not including the things you testified to about your phone calls with Matt. Do you remember those questions?
About not,
Not including in your email or not communicating
Correct.
to law enforcement the things that you now testify to?
yes,
Okay. Again, do you remember exactly what was written in this email to Detective Gross?
not word for word, no.
And is it again an accurate representation of your memory at that time that you now no longer have exactly what was written?
Yes,
Show you again, paragraph 2, the second paragraph at the top of page 2. Starting with after May 25th, and then stopping that man.
Yeah. After May 25th, I spoke frequently with her husband. At first, it was pleasant. Then on 3 occasions, he demonstrated a desire to control, a threatening tone, and name-calling me in a text that also complained to
What?
my family about defamation of character that we were not committing. I no longer speak on the phone or text with Matt because of these negative and frightening interactions.
So again, you were asked on cross-examination if you had put in the email anything about those conversations, and you answered no, right?
Correct?
And that was after you had only had a brief moment to look over the email and try to recall everything that was in it, right?
Yes.
But when you actually look and read the email, it is true that you did put the stuff in there about those conversations.
Sustained.
Is what's written in this email more or less accurate than your answers on cross-examination?
More.
You also were asked about phone conversations with Detective Grubbs. You remember that?
Yes.
And
Why is he leading?
Because
Quit
they're allowing
leading.
him to.
do you recall leaving Detective Grubbs a voicemail on June 12th?
Yes.
this
they're
witness.
taunting
And do you
and leading.
recall what that voicemail was?
Yes.
It was about the request for me to be the liaison with the police and that particular statement of you should think long and hard about whether you want to see your sister again.
And that was
Do we have evidence of this?
something that you did after your conversation with Matt and based on his reaction to you.
Wait,
talking
what's evidence?
with him.
Well, up to it. Go ahead.
Yes.
I don't know anymore.
You were asked some questions about whether you came to Ohio to physically search for your sister.
Yes.
Why did you not come to Ohio?
We were quarantined.
That wouldn't have stopped
Were
me.
you-
Initially, we were quarantined.
Yep.
And then
Not
subsequent to that, we
understand.
didn't know what happened to Emily, so I was a little frightened and worried about where I would stay. And I was unemployed and couldn't afford a hotel. So there were multiple reasons, and my time I developed this digital way of collecting information and disseminating information that was helpful in looking for a missing person in particular, which I was hopeful Emily was initially.
You were asked questions about your communications with Matt. They were fairly regular initially.
Yes.
When did that?
Yes, AP, they should be.
After that phone call about wanting me to be the liaison with the police and the tone of voice that he used, I just did not speak with him on the phone after that.
Finally, Amy, you were asked some questions or
I
read
think so, Dazzler.
a portion of a sentence at the end of the email that you sent to Detective Grubbs. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And defense counsel asked you about looking for fibers in hair, fibers on clothing, digital evidence, right?
Yes.
Was that entire sentence?
No,
Do you remember exactly the words of that entire sentence?
not exactly.
I know,
Have you seen
AP.
that email? That would be an accurate representation of what you actually wrote at the time?
Yes.
Nothing would be stopping me.
And you, states exhibit 4, starting at the bottom of page 2 with still, and then continuing on to the top of page 2.
What I wrote that day was still, I urge an investigation to look carefully at the evidence, including footprints in the soil, fibers in her hair, fibers on her clothing, digital evidence on her phone and laptop and that of her spouse, broken bones, crushed cartilage, and bruising inconsistent with suicide by hanging. It is my expectation a clear and true understanding will come forth about Emily's death.
So, defense counsel did not read you your entire sentence of
No.
the things that you encourage people to look at in this case.
Correct.
No further questions.
Recross?
Holy shit.
You also
Oh my
told us
gosh.
about broken bones, crushed cartilage. By cartilage, you meant what, Amy?
Cartilage is this part of your nose.
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Okay. And bruising, so hemorrhaging, right? Like if she punched, you get a bruise. And you put bruising inconsistent with suicide by hanging.
I said bruising inconsistent with suicide by hanging, yes.
And then it says, it is my expectation a clear and true understanding will come forth about Emily's death.
That was my hope.
And then do you see further? Because I want to make sure now to really include every single sentence. It says September 18, 2020, 9:52 a.m. And it reads
Yes, Amy.
examples of how Matt ties. T-I-E-S. Do you see that, Amy?
Correct.
Okay. And
Yep.
did you send Detective Grubbs samples of how Matt ties?
Samples. No.
Examples.
Examples, yes.
Okay. And so those should have been attached to the email that the state had? Yeah, Sarah.
That was,
I'm sorry, did you send the state examples of how Matt ties?
yes.
Showing the witness what has
What?
previously been marked as, or what is being marked as Defendant's Exhibit C. Amy, do you recognize these shoes?
No.
Okay. If I could hone in, is this one of the pictures that you sent about how Matt ties?
I don't remember.
Well, what did you send the police? Because nothing's attached.
I sent photos
Through,
that
not
I
to.
saw on Facebook.
Always through, not to.
Of how Matt ties?
Yeah, of Matt's shoes that he was wearing.
And those, how many photographs did you send Detective Grubbs about how Matt ties his shoes?
I don't know. I don't recall.
You would agree, though, since we're being thorough, that the word you use is examples, plural, right?
Correct.
And attached to that is nothing.
On these emails
Yeah.
today, yes.
But your recollection is you sent Detective Grubbs pictures of how Matt ties, right?
Correct.
Because that's important, is not?
I don't,
Well, that was important to you.
it's true that I sent pictures.
I want to go back to the email. And specifically.
Scott, I hope you're
the
okay.
questioning on redirect. The paragraph, second full paragraph, page 2, when you were asked about vodka. The state is so right. Let's make
I
sure
hope
we have
you're okay,
every
Scad.
sentence.
Let
It
us know if
begins
you
in that
need anything.
paragraph, does it not? Emily had shared some of her struggles in her marriage, living with Matt's traumatic brain injury and adjusting after Joey died, period.
Yes.
She said nature therapy was helping,
Yes.
right? And then the sentence, she did not like her husband's use of vodka. And you surmised, Amy, did you not, that it inferred with his thinking?
I wrote it interfered, yes.
It interfered.
Yes.
That was your conclusion.
Yes.
And I want to be specific because the state's right. Let's be specific. You wrote to Detective Grubbs that Emily told you she did not like her husband's use, U-S-E, right?
Yes.
Not abuse. The word you use is use, is it not?
Correct.
Are you married?
I'm divorced.
In life, when you have had a partner, fair to say, Amy, that we don't always love everything about our partners.
Correct.
You just mentioned about the searches. And I think Andy, your brother, lives about an hour away in Ohio.
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope.
You asked about why she didn't come for searches, and she said she didn't have anywhere to stay.
What is the problem?
I'll permit that answer.
Your brother Andy lives about an hour away.
Yes.
But about the searches, the fact that you weren't here, you didn't participate in searches on the ground, it doesn't mean just because you weren't participating in searches that you didn't love your sister, does it?
Correct.
Nothing further.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question you would like to ask this particular witness, you may write it down, and if you do, pass it to the end. Becky, our court reporter, will obtain those from you.
I think this is really cool. The jury questions.
Yeah, they have better questions than the lawyers.
I've never seen that before.
I've seen it in a couple trials.
God, if I was on that jury, I'd ask so many fucking questions.
Yeah. Like, why didn't you search? Because we were quarantined. Not a good enough answer.
Yeah. Are you vaccinated? That would be my question.
I don't think you can ask that kind of question.
Pfizer or Moderna? Or were you the Johnson & Johnson type? Why'd your marriage fail? Is it because you're Karen? Oh, there's the other potato cop. He just moved.
Oh.
He didn't want to be in the limelight anymore.
Yeah. He's like, I'm falling asleep. Get me out of here.
Mm-hmm. Now we got this guy who's auditioning for the next... Never mind.
What did Bobby call him? Bean dip?
I think so. Just not sure that that's not a racism. So I don't. It's the first Johnson she's gotten in 20 years.
Oh.
See, no, it's fuck.
So close.
Yet so far. See, I'm not the only one.
I watched a lot of trials.
Oh, fuck, don't go backwards.
I do not know.
Okay. And the final question is, did Emily go through any...
I feel like I just made it worse. God.
Stop touching things.
There we go. Perfect.
Do you know of the nature of Matt's traumatic brain injury?
No.
Okay. The next question is, did Emily go through any type of therapy after her husband Mark died?
I do not know.
Okay. Did she go through any type of therapy after her father died?
I do not know.
Okay.
I'll leave my
And the
touch
final
up for
question
you,
is, did Emily
Bobby.
go through any therapy after her mother died?
I do not know.
Okay. You've seen Exhibit 2, a photo of Emily and her husband on Memorial Day. Were those pictures sent by email, text, or messenger?
It was posted in Facebook on Emily's page, and I sent it by Facebook Messenger to a chat with Matt and Emily and I.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do these questions raise any questions the state would like to ask this witness?
No.
Defense. Okay. Thank you. You may sit down. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank goodness.
Fantastic. So, sister has testified. We got a good chunk of it in tonight.
Yeah, we did.
And so that is this is all your fault, chat, because you picked this one.
I didn't pick
all your
it.
fault. I didn't pick anything. I left it up to you guys.
I didn't pick it.
It seems like it'll be interesting. We'll
It gets-
get moving with it a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
it'll get better, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, so that's gonna be it for us this evening. A couple of things we got coming up. I am going to try everything I can. Still haven't absolutely nailed it down, but I'm thinking sometime around 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm going to go down to Detroit to the UAW, well, probably Wayne, to the UAW headquarters and broadcast live, see what's going on with the strike.
Tonight?
And no, tomorrow
morning.
And then, yeah, so I chose nothing. What? Y'all voted for Joe Biden.
Fake news.
I did again. I'm sorry. But no, it will pick up.
It
will.
will.
Was just the first witness and
Yeah.
getting all the bullshit out of the way. So
Right.
So look out for that live stream. It will just be a YouTube live because I will not be setting it up. Because I don't know what time I'm gonna get there. I have some things to do in the morning, but I definitely want to go to the site and report on it because it's pretty historic. The headquarters is a mess. No thanks. Yeah. I think that's why I'm gonna go to Wayne. AP, because Wayne, they have a big UAW office too. That's where Fetterman was and all the bullshit. So I don't really want to go down to Detroit. So I gotta park, fuck around, take the Q 2 blocks to nowhere,
And find out.
Yeah. So, but I'll either go to Detroit or Wayne tomorrow, and we'll see from there. So, but thanks for hanging out with us, Dog Mama.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen. And just like the last trial, this will be every Monday till we're finished. So, we'll probably have 5 or 6 weeks of Mondays. So, it's not that I am like afraid of Detroit. I've lived there for a long time. They do Dearborn office is easier to park anyways. Okay. Maybe I'll just go up to Wayne and Dearborn and say fuck Detroit, or Wayne, Dearborn, Lincoln Park, or I don't know. I'll see where it takes me. But at some point tomorrow I'll check in from a UAW center in Southeast Michigan. So that's going to be it for me tonight. I hope you guys have an awesome night, and we will catch you later.
Good night.
Good night.